Good afternoon, everyone. We will now call the June 3rd, 2019 board meeting to order. Mr. Gaither, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Representing Educational District 1, Ms. Leslie Grant. Representing Educational District 3, Ms. Michelle Olympiadis. Representing Educational at Large Seat 7, Ms. Candace Wood Jackson.
Present.
Representing Educational District at Large Seat 8, Ms. Cynthia Briscoe Brown.
Present.
Representing Educational District at Large Seat 9 and Board Chair, Mr. Jason Estevez.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gaither. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 6th board meeting.
So moved.
It's been properly moved by Cynthia Briscoe Brown, seconded by Candace Wood Jackson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the June 3rd board meeting agenda?
So moved.
Been properly moved by Cynthia Briscoe Brown, seconded by Michelle Olympiadis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Gustafson, will you please bring the work session items?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 5 presentations today that focus on various aspects of the strategic plan. We will begin with Connie Brown. Please join us. She is the Executive Director for Internal Audit. She'll present her annual audit report to the board. Then Erica Long, the Senior Advisor for Policy and Government Affairs, will do the legislative session recap. Then Matt Underwood, Executive Director of Innovation, will present the report on charter schools and a separate summary for our partnership schools. Larry Hoskins, the Chief Operations Officer, at the request of board member Nancy Meister, will present on transportation. Then finally, Lisa Bracken, the Chief Financial Officer, will provide the fiscal year 2019 General Fund Monthly Financial Update and a presentation on the final adoption of the fiscal year 2020 budget recommendation. Welcome, Connie Brown. Press your button. Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings, Board Chairman Estevez and board members. I am here today to provide an overview of the work that the Office of Internal Compliance performs and to share a status update on the 2019 audit plan. Sorry about that. And the presentation will include a high-level overview of OIC's roles and responsibilities, a status update on the 2019 audit plan, as well as some value add that OIC has brought to the table since we've brought a renewed focus to risk-based auditing. At the end of the presentation, the goal is for you to have an understanding as to how OIC has moved to risk-based auditing and is working with APS leadership to implement thoughtful and cost-effective measures to help manage and mitigate risk within the district. I wanted to share with you guys how OIC fits in the big scheme of things. OIC reports directly to the board via the audit committee. The audit committee oversight ensures independence. And what I mean by that is organizationally right now, OIC is set up outside the reporting line of those responsible for the areas that we audit. This allows our auditors to perform work freely and objectively. The audit committee currently consists of 6 members, 3 voting and 3 non-voting. Audit committee chair Grant, Collins, and Olympiadis are board members that are represented on the audit committee. We also have 3 non-voting members, and they are our community advisors. I don't believe that any of them were able to join us today, but they bring an independent expert knowledge to the board, and they also volunteer their services. They're not here today, but it's important to acknowledge them because of the experience and the skill set they bring to the table. We have Brian Hawkins, who's a senior manager with UHY Advisors, and he has a strong IT background. We also have Leslie Ward, who's the former chief audit executive for the city of Atlanta for, I believe, about 10 years. We also have Mr. Earl Fagan Jr., who's a forensic accounting specialist and recently with KPMG, if I'm not mistaken. But we really appreciate the time and the efforts that they put in working with the board and my team. And last but not least, I'd like to acknowledge my 2 awesome lead internal auditors. One's on vacation, the other one is at her desk working diligently to meet some deadlines that we've got in play. But what I'd like to say is that although the team is small, I like to say we're mighty. We have, between the three of us, over 60 years worth of experience in internal audit and business. So I believe with the way OIC is positioned within the organization from an independence perspective and the skill sets that my team brings and our community advisors bring, I think we are positioned to deliver on the powers and duties as set forth in the charter. This slide represents the powers and duties of the OIC. The charter of the Atlanta Independent School System establishes the independent audit function. We perform audits so that we can provide assurances to the board that the district is complying with laws and regulations, they are achieving desired results from programs and initiatives, that they are using resources efficiently and effectively, and that they have adequate procedures, systems, and controls in place to help manage and mitigate risk for the district. How do we do this? Before I go any further, I thought it would be important for me to share the definition of internal audit, and I promise this is the only slide I will read, but this is the formal definition. Internal auditing is an independent, objective activity designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. Internal auditing is critical to ensuring strong organizational governance, oversight, risk management, effective internal controls, and efficient operations. So not only was that a lot of words, it was a mouthful. But what exactly does that mean? What do we do? We evaluate risk. We don't do this in a vacuum. We work with APS leadership to understand where the risks are, to understand if the risks are under controls, to help us understand if the risks are worth taking. But it's not just enough for us to identify risk. It's important for us to evaluate controls that the organization has in place to help manage those risks. So we ask questions such as, are the controls in place? Are there enough controls in place? Do we need additional controls? Are there unnecessary controls? Are the controls cost effective? And after we do all that, and we do all that analysis, and we do our field work, we end up making recommendations to management for corrective actions. And again, we work closely with management to make sure that the corrective actions are thoughtful and they make sense. The people behind me are the experts in running the school district. My teams, I like to consider us experts on risk and control. So between the partnership between management and OIC, I think gets us to those thoughtful recommendations. Along the same lines, you know, what's a quality internal audit function? I think that it depends on who you ask, but there are probably countless measures and opinions on what constitutes a quality function. I listed a couple of the bullets up top. Some people think, you know, a good quality function would entail a function that can help you understand what's happening, what's working well, what's not working so well. They should be able to raise red flags to management to give them a heads up. They should be advocates for improvement, and improvement is key here. We don't want to create a combative environment. We don't want to create a gotcha environment. This is about how can we help the district improve towards efficiencies and effectiveness. The last bullet on there is to serve as a trusted advisor, and I think that's the ultimate, and that's what all audit functions strive to be. We're a young department, and you know the goal is to eventually get there, but that's going to take some time. That's going to take some relationship building, because trust isn't something that you're just given. It's something you have to earn, and I think we're well on our way to doing that. But again, those are just a couple of the points and criteria that some use to identify a quality internal audit function. I believe ultimately that a good function is one that basically can help keep bad things from happening, but at the same time ensure that good things can happen as well. So how do we get started? What do we do? We start with an audit plan. Actually, I'll back up. We start with a risk assessment, but from an audit plan perspective, at the start of each year, I present an audit plan to the audit committee for review and comment. And the origin of that plan is a risk assessment that we complete on a 3-year schedule. And I guess in its simplest forms, for me, a risk assessment is a what-if analysis. what could potentially go wrong within the district that could prevent the achievement of the district's strategic objectives. Again, we start with that in terms of focusing our efforts and where to look within the district. But the other things we think about are we will review the external audit reports and see if they had any issues or concerns that we should consider. We also consider suggestions from APS leadership, board members, and potentially other interested parties. But at the bottom of the slide, one of the things, I'll go back, there's a small graph at the bottom of the page. The plan that we presented to the audit committee for school year 2019, roughly we think we are on track to complete that plan by June 30. Right now, as of mid-May, we are 68% complete with that plan. And as we go through the rest of the presentation, we'll show you the work that we've actually done to date. I wanted to show this slide. It's difficult to read, but this has been my department's roadmap for the past 2.5 years. It is a direct result of the risk assessment that we worked on with PwC 2 years ago. It includes all the major areas, multiple projects, potential projects within each one of those areas, but this list is in no way all-inclusive in terms of the APS universe. It was just our first stab at it, and it's meant to be a guide. Again, we look at other factors. We start with the risk assessment, but we look at other factors to help us determine what we should be looking at on an annual basis. And that information, again, is presented to the audit committee, and we're challenged on some of those things to make sure we're using our resources in the best possible way. But the items highlighted in orange are the ones that audits that we have either started or they're in process. The audits that are in black are ones that we haven't touched. We should be coming up on our 3-year next school year, so we should be starting this process all over again. That's not to say some of these same topics won't be there. And that's not to say that before June 30, 2020, my team will be able to cover those items as well. And I'm going to go through. This slide depicts, this is where we get into the status of the audit plan. This slide depicts the audits that we have completed, issued, and released to the audit committee for school year 2019. This represents, again, about 68% of the work that we've done. And effective May 31st, this past Friday, we've made all of our reports available on our website for public viewing. You don't necessarily have to go through the open records system to get access to our reports. In the spirit of transparency, this is something the audit committee has asked us to do and been wanting to do for a while now. So all of these reports that are listed here, in addition to all the reports that we have issued in school year 2017 and school 2018, they are all posted on the OIC website, which you can access through the APS homepage. The next slide simply shows the 5 remaining audits on our audit plan that are in process. We believe we can complete this plan, and the goal is to have them, at least the fieldwork and the reports, issued by June 30 of this year. We have work in process that's always going to be ongoing, and those would include investigations and looks into reports that come through the Ethics and Compliance Hotline, as well as follow-up work that's a result of some of the audit work that we do. Our department is charged with following up on the corrective action plans that management agrees to put in place. This slide provides a summary of the follow-up recommendation work that we have to do going forward. Over the course of the past 2.5 years, we've presented over 200 recommendations to management. All of those recommendations have been accepted by management, and corrective actions have been agreed upon. But if you look at this slide, you will see that a large concentration of those recommendations were in the areas of the miscellaneous cash activity account fund, which is more commonly referred to as the student account funds. And those accounts are managed at the school level, but the CFO's office provides oversight to those schools. It should be noted that while there were a lot of recommendations that came out of the work, OIC has found no evidence to suggest that there's any widespread fraudulent activity going on. These audits are really compliance-based, and we're comparing the work that's actually going on to the standard that's been set in the financial services guideline program. But there were a lot of issues out there, and in working with the CFO and her team, they have come up with an accounting project training plan that they've been implementing this school year. And the plan is it included an updated financial services guide. It includes some online training. It's going to include some live training. So what my team is doing is we're waiting for that program to be implemented. We want to give it a little time to work so that they can work out the kinks, and then my office will go back in and we will follow up and perform an assessment as to the effectiveness of that training program. In reference to the other audits and the other follow-up work, those recommendations will be followed up on, and they'll be shared in open session at our regularly scheduled audit committee meetings. The last piece that our office has responsibility for is we manage the ethics and compliance hotline. And for those of you that don't know the number of the website, I've included them on the slide for your benefit. But this hotline is open for the public to report concerns that relate to fraud, waste, and abuse as it relates to the district. However, my experience here in dealing with our hotline is that the majority of the concerns reported actually relate to human resource type issues, and those issues we turn over to the Office of Employee Relations, which is a department under the HR umbrella. This slide shows that this year we've only had about 116 reports. 94% of those reports, again, relate to HR issues. We did not look into those, but the other 7 and the 10 complaints that the 10 requests that we received from management, my team did work on, and of the 17, roughly about 35% of them were substantiated claims, meaning there was some truth, and we followed up with management and appropriate action was taken, and about 35% was unsubstantiated. Meaning we found no evidence that there was any validity to the report that was presented to us. And there was about 12% that was partially substantiated. We get a lot of information in those reports. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not. So that's kind of where it falls out. And 18% of them are currently ongoing. We haven't finished the work. And last, I promised I'd show how we have added some value since we've been here. We do our job. My team's awesome. They work really hard. And these are just an example of some of the things that have resulted in some of the audit work that we've done. The top one we've talked about in the past. We had a director level employee doing business directly with the district, which was in direct conflict of our board conflict of interest policy. A couple of other things on there based on some of the work that we did. We recommended the need for a policy or some regulations around crowdfunding. Also, we recommended the need for some clarity enhancement around the roles of booster clubs in the schools. We've identified additional uses of systems that we already have in place that would enhance the controls within a given department. So again, I listed those bullets for you to go back so that you could have an opportunity to see just the type of work that we're doing and the value that we actually are adding to the district. I think I'm close to or have passed my time, but Board Chairman Estevez, this concludes my presentation, and I'm open to questions if there should be any.
Great. Thank you so much for that, and thanks for all the work that you do. The Office of the OIC, or the OIC, is incredibly important to what we do as a board, but also what we do as an organization. So thank you for your leadership in that. Questions from the board? Okay.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment of really appreciating the work that you've done and the staff have done. It has really been, for me, sitting on the committee, very informative in an area that I did not know. I thought I thought I knew a lot about, audits and, in those processes and procedures and even like learned behavior. But over the years of sitting on this committee, you've done a great job of really not only being transparent about about where we are, but also like it's really been a learning experience for me. So I just wanted to say kudos to you and your team for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I just want to say ditto to what Ishay says. Thank you very much for all you do. I'm real excited about the committee and having the expertise on there as well to help educate us as board members to the work that we need to be doing. So thank you.
Leslie?
I just, again, thank you. I'm very excited that we were able to kind of rebuild this function. And there is still a lot of work to do. I appreciate the additional funding that was allowed to go through in the proposed budget for this year to help you out a little bit more. So thanks to the board for hopefully supporting that. And the public is welcome to come to the internal audit meetings. Every board member is welcome to come to those. There's no, they are live streamed. But if folks ever have any questions about what's going on, just please feel free to reach out. Connie's very open and available. And I really appreciate you getting those audits up online. I know that we have been talking about that for a while, and there will be additional work to, there's some historic pieces out there that I would like us to get up as well. Not just the things that have been done within your tenure, but some legacy pieces as well. And just encourage anyone, again, if you want to, if there's something that you feel like it needs to be brought to our attention, please do so. You can contact me or Connie. But there's a lot of important work going on here, so I really appreciate it. And thanks for coming to report.
Also want to shout out Leslie Grant, chair of the audit committee, for her leadership in helping the department become what it is today. And so thanks to Leslie, thanks to the committee, but also thanks to the OIC and how it works with the administration and having an administrative team. I know you mentioned this, but it's important in any company, any organization, to have an administration that works well with its audit function to really improve the organization and move forward. And I think we have very good examples that of where that's happened. And I want to shout out all of those who attend these meetings regularly, from the administration, all of the folks that you've worked with, Connie, to improve and to fix things that have been identified. Dr. Sarkin? Did I? Oops. Say it again.
I want to give a special shout out to Adrienne White, who is no longer one of our community audit advisors, but stepped in early on, was the first one that we put back on when we renewed that position. And she has been and was critical in getting this reset. So thank you to Adrienne White.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Oh, anyone on your team here? Stand up. Thank you so much. I met you earlier, so I just wanted to shout you out. Thank you.
Erica Long, our Senior Advisor for Policy and Government Affairs, will provide a review of the 2019 legislative session and how we progress through those priorities. Welcome.
Thank you. Board Chair Estevez, board members, Dr. Karstafen, thank you for the opportunity to stand before you and report out on the 2019 legislative session at the Capitol. This year's session was a reset in many ways, with us having a new governor, lieutenant governor, new elected leadership of the education committees in the legislature. And so it provided the district the opportunity to introduce itself and our priorities to leaders across the education space. And we ended the session without much major harm to the school district. You will remember the priorities that this board set late last year. Those were our guiding principles as we did our work at the Capitol. And we saw outcomes in several of those priorities. For the second year in a row, the state fully funded quality basic education, which is important to all school districts. And the FY19 amended budget included the $30,000 funding per school for school safety measures. And of course, that was the budget signing where we had the opportunity to host Governor Kemp at North Atlanta High School. We found a positive outcome with respect to annexation legislation. We were able to have productive conversations with members of the Atlanta delegation, continuing to educate them on the effects of homestead exemptions and the property tax mechanisms and how they impact our district. And we saw no progress on those bills, which was a success for us. There was talk around the Capitol that there would be a huge statewide effort towards setting school calendars. Those efforts went nowhere, which was the preference of school districts. I think the state realized that school calendars are best left for local decision and control. As I said before, we had positive outcomes with respect to the major annexation bills that were considered. An annexation bill that would have impacted DeKalb County, as well as an annexation bill in South Folsom. And we were able to express to the decision makers how those bills would have had some negative consequences on this district. We didn't see much movement yet in early childhood education. 2019 is the first year of the biennial session. So 2020, next January session, will be a continuation. But so far, there's not been a lot of major work done with respect to early childhood education. We were able to join up with GEARS and other partners in their activities at the Capitol and make known to legislators that we support in general the importance of early childhood ed. The school safety bill was one of the bills that the governor actually chose to veto at the end of his 40-day decision process once the session ended. Separate from the funding, the per-school funding for school safety, the school safety bill, SB 15, came out of a over year-long effort to address school safety issues in a more holistic way. And the governor had concerns that it would have imposed a lot of new requirements and administrative tasks on individual schools and principals, and that we were not quite ready for that. So I think there were quite a few districts who were in agreement with his decision to veto that bill, and we will monitor any developments on it as we go into next year's session. We're also, of course, one of the bigger priorities of the governor and of the entire state leadership was teacher pay raises. The state did its part, and of course you all are well versed in how the state funding actually comes to us and how it is not completely covered here for us because of our circumstance as a district. But this was a down payment on what the state thought should be an investment in our public school teachers and media specialists, special education specialists, technology specialists, and so many of the people who do the important work for our students every day. Outside of our own legislative priorities, there was big movement on public school vouchers. It was one of the
change the slides though as you go? Yeah, and one more. There you go.
big movement on public school vouchers. And this is one of the more contentious political issues. It was interesting to see how it all fell out. But in the end, as you know, the general voucher bill did not pass. There will probably be some movement in dual enrollment going into next year. This has been a widely popular program, which is excellent for our students and their families, but it does come at a cost to the state. So there will likely be some restrictions placed on dual enrollment eligibility moving forward in the next couple of years. We have to continue to watch out for TRS reform. I'm sure you all saw a lot of the media stories about the TRS audit, the issues behind the University System of Georgia and whether they've paid in their fair share. This issue is not dead. It will come back up next year, but there have been few definitive decisions made on that at this point. We will, going forward, have to certify twice a year the driver's license status of our bus drivers. The recess bill was vetoed by the governor. It was another instance of Governor Kemp being concerned about local control and the state going too far down into the weeds of school district operations. And we will continue to watch what is called the Tim Tebow bill, which allows access for homeschool students to participate in athletics in their zone schools. We join our colleagues across the state with having significant administrative and operational concerns with this bill, and we'll continue to watch it moving forward. Just on a note, I appreciated the opportunity to represent our district and our students at the Capitol. I spent my time there every day, and it was rewarding, I believe, for us, in that it allowed us the chance to have a consistent voice in committee meetings, in the legislature itself, and to just really present a face for where our priorities are as a school district. We look forward to continuing to work with that same energy and commitment in the sessions going forward. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Erica. Questions from the board? Michelle? Cynthia? Leslie?
Erica, thank you. It's always, you always present very comprehensive presentations, walking us through everything. And I'm sorry I missed my pre-board meeting this week. And so I do have one simple question, which is on the $30,000 for the safety dollars to go into schoolhouses. Is that $30,000 per district or $30,000 per schoolhouse?
Per schoolhouse.
Oh,
Per
that's
school
nice.
building.
Okay.
Per school building.
And that impacts both traditional and charter, all schools?
Yes, that
Okay,
is correct.
very good. All right, thank you very much.
Cynthia?
And just to clarify, because I'm not sure now, did the governor veto that $30,000 per school, or just veto the part that had the restrictions on it?
The $30,000 per school was provided for in the FY19 amended budget. This is that skinny budget that is decided upon at the very early part of the session. That's done. The governor vetoed SB 15, which was a more comprehensive school safety bill that would have imposed a lot of requirements and administrative tasks on individual schools. And he felt that our districts and our schools were not ready for that. But that is separate from the funding for school safety. In his veto statement, Kemp said that he wanted to at least give us the chance to make what improvements we could make with the $30,000 per school building, capital improvements, physical improvements, hiring people, and then take another look, reconsider that larger school safety bill.
Okay, so the practical effect of that was we get the money without the restrictions.
We get free money, knock on wood.
That's good.
No, wait,
To the
Erica,
extent-
hold on.
It's not free money, but
Let's be really clear, it's reimbursable money. So you have to have enough capacity in your district to spend and then be able to be reimbursed. So I want to manage the expectation around this money and how we're going about. There's still questions that have to be resolved. We're trying to get full guidance. They released an FAQ that, we've all districts have been looking at. People have still sent back in, more questions. But before we, make it sound like every school's getting $30,000 each out of the box, we have to spend, be reimbursed. And while I know they're giving us as much flexibility as possible, you have to outline plans. It's a lot of other work that we have to do. So I reject the free money thing. I mean, it's more money if you can spend money to get money, which is a different concept. And then they had earlier guidance before that then got switched a little bit. And I don't have all the details in front of me, but I have sent y'all, during this process, there were some questions along the way where we were on that. And as we get closer to the start of the next school year, we'll have better guidance from the state. So, and we need to we're looking at things like infrastructure. Lots of high schools have cameras that need to be replaced. There are just some things about our daily business that we need to do but we got to be able to spend it and then get it back, which may not mean that we're going to end up with $30,000 per school, depending on how much we can spend in real time based on that allocation.
I'm sure, I suspect I speak for my colleagues. I am getting a lot of questions about that particular item. And so when we get a little more clarity from the state and we know how that's going to work, we may want to put something up on the website or do a blog or something about that, because the community is very interested in who will decide how that money is being spent and how it will be allocated.
I agree. We can do that.
Thank you.
Leslie?
I know that we've heard about this for a long time. Could you, send a link to the specific legislation that has to do with the transportation issue? I know that we're going to have a presentation on that, but what essentially is the issue? How much time and backbone is anybody really putting into getting something done around this so that there can be a lot more flexibility in how we get children to school?
Well, there's not legislation yet.
But so what is the requirement, I guess, that
why
are we required to put children on yellow buses?
That is the fundamental question. And that's a question that we've posed to legislators as well as to officials within the Department of Education. There seems to be a lack of clarity in the state, somewhere between the legislature, education, and even the Attorney General's office, over how much flexibility is allowed in legal terms and in practical terms. We spent quite a bit of time this session talking with a legislator who expressed some interest in helping us at least address a piece of this issue, being the homeless students. This is someone who is familiar with McKinney-Vento and the commitments we make to transporting our homeless students. But there is a political logjam somewhere between those agencies and the legislature, and we are not yet at the point where anyone is willing to help solve that problem for us. We spent time at the Capitol walking through much of the information you all will see later this afternoon about the sheer number of homeless students who transport across the metro Atlanta area. So
that were federally mandated.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it's not
and we made that point, and I think that there is a better understanding of what this undertaking is, but politically, there seems to be some unspoken concern with the idea of opening up transport options, and I haven't quite gotten to what the crux of that is. And of course, you know, the nature of the legislature, they start out slow, then things move pretty quickly. And one of the legislators we were working with ended up moving their attention to another issue that was also important to their community. But there is some disconnect there between what our needs are as a district and what the perception is of the flexibility that we have and what the actual flexibility is that's out there. So we'll continue working on it, but there was no bill addressing that introduced this year.
But we're legally not permitted to put children, transport them to and from school and field trips on.
That is what has been conveyed to us. We believe that that is the case. What happens, though, is that there is a perception from one of the agencies that we are allowed this flexibility, and the different parties are not communicating well on that yet.
Okay.
And this is an issue that the other school districts face as well.
And last question, could you explain a tiny bit about what happened around the First Priority Act, the turnaround, CTO?
A lot of political maneuvering. There was, the thought that the CTO function would be moved in terms of its reporting structure. And I think that when it was conceptualized back under the former administration, there was a different political dynamic between that governor and the state school superintendent. It seems that the dynamic has changed. This governor the state superintendent seem to be working more closely together. And so there was the thought that the CTO should answer directly to the state school superintendent. And there's still some stuff that's up in the air, even in terms of who the different people are and how long they will be in place. But you will recall that the CTO itself has focused so much of its work these first couple of years on South Georgia, on other communities outside of Metro Atlanta. So the changes here is something that we have stayed up to date with and watched, but as a district, we didn't lean in to that process very much at all. It seemed to be a bigger political fight between people above us.
Maria?
Yeah, so I just wanted to go back to the original question without speculating about what has happened in the past about yellow buses. Do you have access to, is there someone we can ask for, what is the legislative guidance around yellow buses? Like, do they have that or not have that? I never heard that answered. Have we pulled that? Have we ever seen it? Can you make that happen?
The only person who could get that for us would be the Attorney General himself.
Okay, so I just, in response to the board request, I think one action that we need to do is formally request from the superintendent to the Attorney General the guidance on the yellow buses.
Right.
So if we're going to have a strategy, if we're going to try to figure out how to find the right people in the legislature to address it, we start with a correct statutory base for how we launch that conversation. So I know I'm just saying, like, while you were talking, I heard, like, perhaps, like, even somebody said, well, we have to use the yellow buses for field trips. That's not necessarily true, especially on sports. So I think there's just a lack of clarity on what the yellow buses, how we've been directed on the yellow buses. But let's, for action, get the letter to the Attorney General and get the official guidance, however far that goes, from the perspective of the Attorney General. And let's just make the request. And we may or may not get it, I don't know, but I think we start there so that we understand how to build our strategy for the future. And anything else that goes along with it. So if there's any supplementary guidance or any bills that, I know that there was some work that people started to try to do on the homeless piece, just get everything that we are allowed to have access to so we can at least circulate it with the board so that when we start talking about our legislative agenda for next year, we're all going from the same base. And they can give us, because every year we talk about transportation. I don't know if everybody remembers this. For 5 years, we've talked about doing something in transportation, but it's got to be bigger than us. So maybe the strategy is about working with GSBA or something
Other
else,
districts,
because this approach hasn't moved the needle at all. And then the second piece about the CTO, I just want to be clear, as a district, and I sat on the advisory committee, we don't know the facts behind that at all. All we've seen is what y'all have seen, which has been whatever's been publicly discussed in the legislature, which isn't much at all. And even with the advisory committee, I mean, there wasn't much explanation. The meetings ended. So I don't know. I don't feel like we have the right, all the information about what's happening with that. But I also think what we could just do is make a formal request of the chair of the advisory committee.
Okay.
And even the governor's office, or the governor's office of student achievement, and see if we can get an official position on what that is. But I just think as a district, we really don't know. And those meetings, it's not like somebody had a culminating meeting to explain any transition. So that I feel like we don't have facts on either. If we could just make those two formal requests, that would be a great starting place for what we might decide to do on other things.
Okay.
Any other questions? Erica, thank you so much. You've been a great advocate for us at the Capitol. I've had legislators talk to me about the great job you're doing, so we appreciate that work. And thanks for your continued advocacy for APS.
Thank you.
Welcome, Matt Underwood. He's going to be providing a presentation on the Office of Innovation, but particularly charter schools, and also what's happening with our partnership schools, two separate topics.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board Chair Estevez, Dr. Karstafen, and members of the board. As Dr. Karstafen mentioned, Matt Underwood, I've been serving as the Executive Director here at the Office of Innovation since January. I'm happy to provide you this afternoon with a brief update on the work of our office and overview of key data for our district's charter schools, as well as for our partner schools. Our Office of Innovation works to support and oversee all of the district's charter schools as well as partner schools, as well as to help support the sharing of effective, innovative practices across schools. I'm very grateful to have most of my Office of Innovation team here today, so thank you for coming. Listed here are a few focus goals for our office in the coming school year. I'd like to highlight our work with charter schools to develop and pilot a single common online enrollment application across charter schools to create a process that's easier and more equitable for families seeking to apply to one of the district's charter schools. This common application will also help our office to collect better demand data to help inform startup and renewal petition process. Turning to the 24 schools our office will support and monitor next school year, here first is a map that shows the district's 18 charter schools. And as for our partner schools, we'll work with 6 next year as KIPP Woodson Park Academy is about to become the newest partner school next month. The most recent complete demographic data from the state shows that the demographic profile for charter schools as a whole is quite similar to the district as a whole, with the only significant difference being the overall percentage of students directly certified. Changing student demographics at a few of our charter schools account for much of this difference. 6 of our charter schools, it's Atlanta Classical Academy, Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School, Drew Charter School, the Condesi Schools, Wesley International Academy, and Westside Atlanta Charter School, have been or are implementing weighted student enrollment lotteries, among other steps to maintain or increase the percentage of students attending their schools who qualify as economically disadvantaged. As neighborhood schools, our partner schools reflect the communities they serve. You'll see in this data that our partner schools served a population of students that was 100% students of color, with a percentage of students directly certified that was 32% higher than the district average. There are, of course, differences in the way that charter schools and partner schools are governed and operate, and the table on this slide and the next slide, slide 10, outline these differences across a handful of domains. One of the main differences is that our partner schools are neighborhood schools with district-defined attendance zones, whereas our charter schools are open to students district-wide through random enrollment lotteries. One key similarity is that both charter schools and partner schools are accountable to the Atlanta Board of Education results defined in their respective contracts, and our office monitors progress towards these results. So I'll begin a deeper dive into data with enrollment at charter schools. Currently, charter schools account for around 18% of the district's total student enrollment. Based on current charter contracts, total charter school enrollment is starting to plateau as most schools are at or are nearing their contractually defined enrollment caps, and only one school, KIPP Seoul, is still building out grade levels. I've included this slide for informational purposes only from the State Charter Schools Commission, as the commission and their schools operate independent of APS. While most commission schools have statewide attendance zones, a number of these schools are located in or near APS boundaries. And according to the most recent data provided by the commission, a little over 1,200 students zoned for APS were enrolled in a commission school. 2 additional commission schools locating with APS boundaries come online this coming school year. So when looking at performance data, I want to begin by noting that the most recent publicly available milestones data is from 2018. So the next several slides refer to performance data from last school year. On the 2018 Georgia milestones for grades 3rd through 5th, all but one of our charter schools serving those grades had a higher percentage of students at the developing level or higher as compared to the district average. 4 of the top 10 highest performing elementary schools in the district were charter schools. Those were Drew, Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School, Atlanta Classical Academy, and Wesley. And additionally, Drew and Wesley earned recognition as Title I reward schools. All of the charter schools serving students in grades 6 through 8 had a higher percentage of students at the developing level or higher than the district average on the 2018 end of grades milestones, and 8 of the top 10 highest performing middle schools were charter schools. That was Atlanta Classical Academy, Drew, Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School, KIPP Strive Academy, Wesley, both campuses of Condesi, and KIPP Ways Academy. All the charter schools that serve high school grades in 2018 outperformed the district average on the end of course milestones. Drew and Atlanta Classical Academy had the second and third highest level of proficiency, respectively, among APS high schools across all end of course tests, while KIPP Atlanta Collegiate had the sixth highest level of proficiency. When looking at the 2018 Georgia Milestone scores relative to the Challenge Index, which accounts for the school's directly certified students and English language learner population, at the elementary level for math, charter school performance was more mixed. On the end of grades milestone, 7 charter schools were above the trend line, while 7 were below. The results for ELA show the same outcomes for these schools. Similar data is presented here for those charter schools serving grades 6 through 8, and results are similar as well, with 7 schools above the trend line and 4 below. Among charter high schools, Drew and KIPP Atlanta Collegiate were above the Challenge Index trend line for performance on 2018 end of course milestones, while Atlanta Classical Academy was below the trend line. Turning to CCRPI, we can examine trends in school performance on this measure in light of changes over the years to the calculation formula by focusing on each school's state percentile rank based on their overall CCRPI score. Among charter elementary schools, 8 schools saw increases from the prior school year with sizable gains made by ANCS, Kendesi, Wesley, KIPP Ways, Westside Atlanta Charter School, KIPP Vision Academy, and KIPP Strive Primary. At the middle school level, 5 schools had an increase in their CCRPI score state percentile rank in 2018, with large jumps for KIPP Strive Academy, KIPP Ways Academy, Kendesi West, and Wesley International Academy. And for our 3 charter high schools, Drew maintained a high state percentile ranking. Atlanta Classical Academy saw a big jump from 2017 to 2018, while KIPP Atlanta Collegiate increased slightly. Turning to financial performance, using standards that have been developed by the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, or NACSA, our office, like most charter school authorizers nationwide, assesses the financial health of our charter schools on 3 primary metrics: the current working capital ratio, the number of days of unrestricted cash, and whether the school has a positive cash flow each fiscal year. And based upon these standards, all of our charter school organizations were financially strong for FY 2018. So now we'll look at separate information here related to all of our partner schools. That's Thomasville Heights, Slater, Price, and Carver STEAM, which are all operated by Purpose-Built Schools Atlanta, and Gideon's operated by Kendesi. Collectively, those schools were serving 2,294 students at the October 2018 FTE count. And again, next month, Woodson Park Academy will transition to partner school status with KIPP, assuming leadership of the school. For our partner elementary schools, each of the schools was below the district average for proficiency rates on the 2018 end of grades Georgia milestones, though within that data there are some positive trends. For example, both Thomasville Heights and Gideon's elementary schools have doubled their proficiency rates in math since the schools became partner schools. Price Middle School was also below the district's average proficiency rate for grades 6 through 8 on the 2018 milestones, though the school did see a slight increase in the percentage of students at proficient from 2017 to 2018. So here we see a similar graph to the one you saw earlier for charter schools, with 2018 Georgia milestones performance relative to the Challenge Index for math. Gideon's and Thomasville Heights Elementary, which has the highest Challenge Index of any elementary school in Atlanta Public Schools, improved their performance relative to the trend line from 2017 to 2018, while Slater Elementary dropped slightly. As a reminder, the academic goals and partner school contracts is directly related to this measure. By the end of 5 years of operation, each elementary and middle partner school will be at or above this Challenge Index trend line, or at least 5 normal curve equivalent points closer to the trend line. At the middle school level, our one partner middle school, Price, which has the highest Challenge Index of any APS middle school, moved closer to the trend line from 2017 to 2018. This slide shows trends among partner schools as it relates to CCRPI single score state percentile ranking after jumps for each of our partner elementary schools in 2017. Each of these schools' state percentile rankings dropped in 2018, while Price Middle School experienced an increase from 2017 to 2018. Looking at partner school financial performance, our office uses the same indicators as we do with our charter schools to assess each partner school organization's financial viability. Based on the audits and other information provided for FY18, Purpose-Built Schools Atlanta demonstrated strong financial health on these metrics. The financial assessment for Condesi at Gideon's fell short on our metrics, and our office issued a letter of concern to the organization and met with Condesi's leadership to review. Condesi's developed a corrective action plan, and our office has been monitoring the school's monthly financial statements and budgeting for FY20, and we've seen an improved financial position. So this is a summary of the information presented. There's more slides in the appendix with additional data for your reference. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Matt. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the team. Questions from board members. Sorry, not boards. Only one board. Leslie? Leslie?
Put me in a queue. Okay. So thank you very much for the update. There's just a formatting piece from historically looking back at the different ways that these reports were generated. I would like to see if we might, this is good and very detailed and hits a lot of points for, especially on the data and whatnot. If there's a way maybe just to get within this like a comprehensive or links or something so that folks can, like what is the specialty? Why do these schools exist? There's some reason that they are in existence that is supposed to be different and fundamental and, innovative. What are those things? And we might be able to highlight that a little bit more. What are the pieces of innovation that are pulled out of that? That it bears saying as much as we can. I think the CREATE grant that came out of Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School now that's spread to several of our clusters is a wonderful, perfect example of what sort of should happen here. Our state teacher of the year was one of those teachers. So anyway, just maybe if we can start to build in a little more of the non-data points, maybe just to highlight what again, and for our other schools as well. Like what is it? What is the culture of the school? Why is it there?
Michelle?
Thank you. It was a very comprehensive presentation. I have two questions. One is you've noted here on your administrative summary that enrollment is beginning to plateau. However, in December of 2017, KIPP was given an additional 1,100 seats that will be building out through the last KIPP, which I think is KIPP Seoul, if I'm
That's correct.
correct. Okay. So if there's any way that we could just kind of check in with our charter schools to see where their caps are and what their projected enrollment is over the next several years, because that like KIPP Seoul, I think they do something fun. They start off with kindergarten and then they come in a couple of years later with like 5th grade or 6th grade, and then they kind of expand in a very condensed time frame. It's not a 9-year rollout, if that makes sense.
So in going back to your original point, the enrollment levels for each of the charter schools, so we monitor that each year and throughout the year, and based on what's in all the current existing charter contracts, that was my point in terms of it starting to plateau. So we do have KIPP Seoul still building at grade levels, but based on the current charter contracts for other schools,
They're
they're
kind of
at or
capped.
near those enrollment caps.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second part is if we can try to get a feel for how our partners are doing. Like if their enrollment, if our APS projected enrollment is kind of out of whack with what is actually showing up at the schoolhouse, because my gut just tells me that people are probably trying to move into those areas and that the projected enrollment may be a little bit stronger, a little bit weak in comparison to the actual enrollment that lands in the school, if that makes sense. Just that, I think those are the two things that I would like to see moving forward or have answered at any time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? One thing I'd like to point out, this was a request I think Leslie made at the last budget meeting. It's included in the appendix on page 42, slide 42. It's the expenditures for charter schools in FY 2018. I think, Lisa, you had mentioned that we started getting data in from charter schools this year, and this is the culmination or the analysis based on that data. In the first column, it's the APS total with the percentages, and then there's the charter proxy. I assume that means just charter, the charter piece of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'll explain and then maybe Lisa can clarify.
And Lisa was looking at you about it. Like,
right.
Yeah, go ahead, answer.
So charter schools through the DE 46, which is a submission to the Georgia Department of Education, provide an accounting of their expenditures. And so what that represents is based on submissions that charter schools have made through that, represents essentially the percentage proportionally across all those different categories of how charter schools spent the allocations that were given to them by APS and the state for FY18.
And then the column next to that is the total number minus the charter piece of it.
Correct.
So what we see during budget meetings, and Lisa, call me on this, what we see during budget meetings is the first column in the little square boxes, right? And I think what Leslie wanted taken out was the second column, which would equal the third column. So this was provided to provide board members a comparison so that they can see what it's like, what the numbers are like with the charter stuff and without it, and a good thing that we can look at moving forward. Did I miss anything there? Yes.
And I guess I would, if it can be explained. The note on this appendix says charter proxy is determined based on the total expenditures submitted to the state from charter schools throughout the entire state, prorated. I added that. That was one question. I added that phrase throughout the entire state, prorated by the amount allocated to charters by APS. I don't know that I understand that exactly.
So to the first question, this represents expenditures by APS charter schools, not any other charter schools.
So we can dissect that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And sorry, I totally interrupted your.
Yeah, so that's through the DE 46 submission that every charter school in the state's required to make to the Georgia Department of Education, but this represents on this slide expenditures just for APS charter schools.
Okay. And then the proration.
The proration amount. So again, I'll take a stab at it, and then I'll let our CFO clarify as needed. So because, and it's labeled as a charter proxy, those submissions, another part of the note there, because individual charter schools might account expenditure categories slightly differently than we might as a district, it's not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison. So by using the prorated amount of the allocation payments provided to charter schools compared to the expenditures through the DE 46 submission, it gives us roughly a percentage of each of those expenditure categories that charter schools spent money on in FY18.
Okay. Thank you.
So, for instance, in this year, charters actually reported $122 million worth of expenditures because they were reporting not only the funding that we provide as APS, but any additional funding sources that they also can utilize. And then what we did is we took that $122 million, and let's say they spent 61% of that $122 million in instruction, we applied that to the $110 million that we allotted. And so we were able to break out based on their spending of their funds, how much we gave them. Does that make sense? Thank you.
And this was something that this is something that we can get moving forward. Right. Okay. Leslie?
In this breakout, thanks for bringing this up, Jason. charter schools pay us an administrative fee, which I believe is 2%, 3%, or 4%?
It can be up to 3%. It's been 2% for the
2%,
past several
okay.
fiscal years.
Where is that? And do they get 2% worth of services?
Where is the 2%? I don't know if you happen to know which category that's in.
That is actually withheld before the allocations go out to the charter schools. So you won't see that in the 110. Basically, if you add 2% on top of the 110, the 110 million, you would see what the charters earn. We withhold 1.5% as a general fund transfer to the innovations office, which is a special revenue account. So we see that as a transfer from the general fund to special revenue. The other 0.05% is withheld from their allotments, and then we allocate in the expenditure budgets of the individual departments that are providing services. So we would see additional funding in transportation for the transportation provided to our partners in charter schools. We are working with Matt to change the way we allocate that a little differently to make reporting a little bit clearer, but that's a buyback process that we've had since I've been here.
So, okay, so is that then, that one, if it all works that way, is the 1.5% totally fund the Office of Innovation?
Yes, and they're actually,
Okay.
we allow carryover for that office too, so it is fully funded out of that 1.5%.
Okay, so nothing's coming off the traditional schools to fund that. And then, I guess, back to the, is there wiggle room in that percentage, or that's baked into their contract?
So I know that last year, we actually, when Gail was still here, she did an audit of the services that were being provided. And it was at that point in time that we did increase the allotment, because it was 1.5% in total previously. And last year we increased that to 2%. My recommendation is that every couple of years we just go back and look at the cost of services, and if we are providing additional services, to determine if that is still an appropriate allocation.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt. That was painless, right?
Relatively.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Great. Larry Hoskins, the Chief Operations Officer, will present the presentation at board member request regarding transportation. Thank you, Nancy Meister, for bringing that to the administration before the end of the school year, and to the team that's been helping us get the focus needed and the recommendations provided to the board, which are under consideration for tonight's fiscal year 2020 budget, which will be presented later this evening. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Madam Superintendent, good afternoon. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide you with an overview of the Transportation Department, current challenges, proposed resolutions, and ongoing initiatives. Atlanta Public School has one of the largest and busiest public school student transportation operations in the state of Georgia. Our operation opens each school day at approximately 4 a.m. and generally winds down at approximately 11 p.m. We have roughly 420 buses serving approximately 32,000 students per day, traveling approximately 21,000 miles daily. We provide transportation for 3 different student classifications: regular education, special education, and homeless or transitional student transportation. This year, the department completed approximately 236,000 runs and trips. In addition to providing yellow bus service for our students, we also partner with MARTA to provide some of our students with MARTA passes. This year, approximately 60,000 student weekly passes. A closer look at our bus fleet. As previously mentioned, we have a fleet of approximately 420 buses that currently range in the age from 3 to 18 years. Currently, the average age of the overall fleet is approximately 9.7 years of age. In December of 2018, the Board of Education authorized the purchase of 49 new buses. We expect the delivery of the new buses sometime this month. In addition to adding 49 new buses to the fleet, we plan on removing 79 of our oldest or problematic buses. By the fall, we project that our fleet will be comprised of approximately 392 buses with an average age of about 8.1 years. I mentioned earlier that the department is responsible for transporting 3 different categories of students: regular ed, special ed, homeless, or transitional students. The McKenty-Vento Act requires school districts to provide transportation to students that are homeless or whom are in transition. This year, we provided transportation services to approximately 645 homeless students. Approximately 555 were Atlanta Public Schools students living outside of their home school attendance boundary and neighboring counties. And approximately 90 students enrolled in a neighboring district but actually living in transitional housing within the Atlanta Public School boundaries. Our experience shows that the day for some of these students can be extremely long. Bus pickups and as early as 4:30 a.m. and evening drop-offs as late as 6:50 p.m. This slide provides more information related to the school stability portion of the McKenty-Vento Act. Another component of the transportation operations is the Transportation Call Center. The call center is a relatively new component of the department. The call center was operationalized at the beginning of school year 17-18. The call center has proven to be a tremendous value add to the operation and for our community, handling over 32,000 calls in its first year and over 26,000 calls this year. One of the challenges that continues to plague our operations and many other transportation operations across the country are bus driver shortages. We ended the school year with 55 driver vacancies, down from a high during the year of 85 vacancies. The district has taken and continue to take a number of different actions to deal with driver shortages: recruitment events, marketing and communication campaigns, and driver signing and referral bonuses. It was because of these efforts we were able to reduce vacancies from a high of 85 to approximately 55. Increasing traffic density is another major challenge that appears to be getting worse with each passing day, not only for our student transportation component, but for other operational departments that rely on travel to fulfill their responsibilities to the district. The next few slides are actual accounts of traffic density within the Grady cluster on May 13, 2019, from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., the period of time when the operation is focused on getting students to school. As we advance through the next couple of slides, please note the amount of red on each map indicating higher degrees of traffic density or congestion as the morning progresses. Traffic congestion is just one of the factors that affect our ability to get students to school on time. At an overall 94 on-time arrival percentage for this school year, we are performing better than average based on the industry standard and slightly below the above average category overall. Elementary level is where we need to focus and improve the most. A December 2018 internal audit revealed a number of opportunities for improvement in the areas of certification and inspections. The administration accepted all of the recommendations from the internal audit team and immediately began working on putting the necessary processes and controls in place to strengthen the organization. The second phase of our new fleet service software implementation, Fleet Focus, is underway and projected to be completed in August. The software will provide the organization with 21st century capability and possesses functionality that will enhance security, workflow, and control structures. We continue our efforts to improve service levels here. And here are a few areas that we will focus on for school year 1920. On-time performance. Select schools will open their doors 15 minutes earlier at 7 a.m. This is not a change in the bell schedule. The first bell at each of these locations will remain scheduled for 8 a.m. Shorten a few routes in both the Grady and North Atlanta clusters by adding a few buses. Under bus fleet maintenance, change in work calendars for our mechanics, which will provide the staff with additional time during the non-academic student days to perform maintenance and upkeep on buses. Additional human capital resources, and under communications and customer service, our hope is to procure and implement a bus tracking app and to integrate and operationalize the Let's Talk application into the call center for the start of the school year 1920. Just to be clear, to implement Let's Talk for the start of the school year, if approved, the operationalizing of a school bus tracking app will take a little bit longer. There's great interest within the Grady cluster to explore alternatives to school bus transportation. Susanna Roberts, a Grady cluster parent, is leading this effort and working with the transportation department to move it forward. The district is also in conversations with Georgia Tech regarding a walkability collaboration. Both parties are interested in identifying and mapping areas of the district that limit family and students' abilities to walk, bike, skateboard to school if they desire. And finally, we would like to inform the community that discussions and decisions regarding a new transportation facility are planned to be a part of the district's up-and-coming master planning efforts. Mr. Chair, this concludes my presentation. May I answer any questions?
Thank you so much, Larry, for that. Questions from the board? Cynthia, Leslie, Candace?
First of all, I want to thank you for this. This is the most comprehensive report we've had on transportation in a very, very long time, and clearly there's some good work going on. The number of emails and calls I get about transportation has also gone down, which is, for me, a very good barometer of the good work you're doing. So thank you. Do want to go at a couple of different questions and comments. The first one was your slide 7, which is the one about the call center.
Okay.
And first of all, as a parent who was once convinced that the call number for transportation rang in a locked closet, I am thrilled to see the progress we're making on this. What can you do a little more detail on this slide? And also, if there are other ways that you are hearing from parents or members of the community about bus issues, what are some of the other ways that parents can reach out, and how successful are those other than emailing their board member?
Understand. Right now, the other ways that parents can reach out and do reach out are through our email, through emails. They obviously, I think that primarily the way we're contacted by parents are typically through calls. And sometimes parents leave inquiries or concerns with schoolhouses, and respective administrations forward that information to the transportation department as well. I'm sorry, your first question was?
Just a little more explanation about this slide 7.
Okay.
And what the different categories are, and particularly, I'm really impressed by what I'm seeing in terms of the amount of time it takes to handle a question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what we're showing, and these are just a few of many different categories on reports that we're able to pull out of the system. But what you see here are total calls presented, which are the total number of calls that actually come into the transportation center. We have calls handled. Those are the calls that actually make their way to a service agent at the transportation department. And the difference between calls abandoned and calls handled, if you add those two up, those are the total calls. One of the things that we're really proud of within our call center operations is many of our call center employees are bilingual. So they are able to address the calls of our Spanish-speaking population. We've seen a decrease in the number of calls overall, but we've also seen a decrease within the calls handled for our Spanish-speaking population. As you previously mentioned, our average handle time has decreased pretty significantly when you look at our Spanish-speaking population. So we have John Franklin and his team, really peeling back the onion on these metrics and really trying to understand the things that we're doing right in the areas of opportunity with respect to dealing with and servicing our community.
Second is just a comment, and that is that we need to get on top of communications to Brandon and Smith, because they've already heard that we're moving that back 15 minutes, and the rumor is already out there that school will be starting earlier, that we will be moving bell time. So we need to get on that quickly. Okay. And finally, I just want to ask you to go to the very last slide, the one we didn't get to, because these are our elite bus drivers, and I had the privilege of attending, along with Erica, their event last week, and it was just wonderful. And so can you just talk for 30 seconds about our elite bus drivers program?
Absolutely. There are different metrics and goals that we set up within the transportation department. Attendance, accidents, several other indicators that we set, that have been set and agreed upon, working with the bus drivers and their representation. And if the bus drivers actually achieve those those goals, individual goals each year, they are considered at the end of the year to be elite. Bus drivers are members of the staff. This is the second year that this program has been in existence, and it gives us an opportunity to really recognize those in the organization or in that part of the organization that are doing a tremendous job. We've expanded that elite program or similar programs to the bus mechanics. We're looking at expanding those opportunities or that program to other parts of the operational area, the custodial area, nutrition areas. So we're really excited about that, and it's really a good thing, and the employees really appreciate it.
As a morale booster, it was absolutely just amazing. I can't say how many came up to me and told me how appreciated they felt, and it really, I think it will really improve both the quality and the quality of the transportation program and the retention and morale of our bus drivers.
Absolutely.
So I just want to say thank you. That was a great program.
Thank you.
That's all I've got.
Leslie?
Can you explain a little bit in detail? We've been talking about a tracking app for a long time, I know. Just what the hope is for this proposed Here Comes the Bus, or whatever it ends up being, what the timeline is, what the implementation would be, and what people could actually expect if this happens.
Well, obviously, the first step, and as part of this year's budget request, is a request to purchase that capability for our buses. The next step will be to actually go out with a formal solicitation through our procurement department to solicit and procure that type of functionality. At this point, that typically takes, once we start with our procurement department, between 2 and 3 months. You know, if we're able to stay on that timeline, then 2 or 3 months, and then we will engage a vendor. I'm not really sure this will be the first time that we would actually get this far in the process, get a vendor on board. So I suspect anywhere, given the number of buses that we have, probably an additional 2 to 3 months to operationalize it. Our hope would be, and I think what would be realistic is, if we shoot for implementation probably sometime over the Christmas holiday and have it hopefully ready beginning in January of 20.
And I guess, again, what could people expect? What is it? What are we hoping for? What would the, yeah.
Yeah, we're hoping for some sort of phone application or PC-based application that would allow parents, students, stakeholders to actually, be able to track a bus to some degree. And we want to manage expectations because there aren't any bus tracker apps out there that are like Uber, but there are some that are getting relatively close. So our hope would be to provide our community with a tool that will enable them to have indicators of where bus locations are and when buses will actually arrive at bus stops and schoolhouses.
Okay, so I just need to manage expectations. Again, there was a pilot or something that was done a few years ago, which makes people think we have something, we're just not sharing it. Okay. Can you talk a little bit?
Can you, hold on, because there's dialogue going that they can't hear. So you said something, Michelle.
I just said that the previous app, whatever the issue was, as a parent, I was serving on Mr. Franklin's committee, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out. So they've been trying to figure out how to move forward since. This was back in easily 3 or 4 years ago, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Franklin first came on board.
Okay. And I guess what the qualifications for that bid or for that process would be, how are you developing what you want in that? How would you develop what are you looking for in that app? How does that get developed?
Yeah, well, we'll sit down with the procurement department, put together a scope of work or our requirements, and we'll put that out on the market and ask different vendors to, or give vendors the opportunity to come in and demonstrate their functionality and capabilities.
Well, I guess the requirements for it. So would part of like that, there's the mom you mentioned who was working on a lot of stuff. Is there some cache of issues that people have had year after year after year? Like, what do you want in this app? Like, what does the end user want in it? Where does that consideration come in?
Well, the apps that we would be reviewing, and certainly as you mentioned, we've been looking at this and working towards this for the last 3 or 4 years. So we've gotten a lot of different feedback from different stakeholder groups, different communities. We know what our parents want and what the communities want. The problem, excuse me. Yeah, the problem is many of these applications, you know, are they're off the shelf applications. So, you know, we've been very diligent in testing and looking at different applications, getting feedback from different districts that have gone out and implemented some of these things, because there's not really one that, at least given the feedback that we've been given, and the research that we've been done, that really addresses all of the functionality that we would like to have. I think as this sort of technology, especially for school buses, mature, a few years down the road, hopefully the technology would catch up with the expectations.
Mm-hmm. And so I have a quick question about McKinney-Vento. If the routes that we are picking up that were identified in this, does any of that include any of the charter runs that we know of? Yeah, any of the, do y'all follow that information at all? Sorry.
Say it one more time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. So I know that some of the charter schools, everybody must serve the McKinney-Vento, mm-hmm. right, and pick up students who are homeless where they reside. I know the charter schools do that as well. Do you capture that information in what you're looking at?
If we service the charter school from a transportation standpoint,
from a buyback, okay.
Yes, then
okay.
it's
But
captured.
Otherwise, okay. Just for wondering about that. And literally, do we send a big yellow bus out to Douglas County at 4:30 in the morning? I mean, like, what does it really look like in terms of that conversation we need to have with the legislature?
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. It's a yellow bus. And what we do is we meet our partner districts at a designated location, and our students that live in their boundaries will get off of their buses, get on our buses. Their students that we transport out to those locations will actually get off our buses and get onto their buses.
I just think people have no concept of that. Maybe a little video. And last thing I really would like us to discuss, because I think I won't call it intentionally kicking the can down the road, but the conversation around this second bus location, if that depot or new site gets built out, where it gets built out, I know that's on us, but where are we going to have that conversation? And then if it gets built out, what is the plan for the Metropolitan Lakewood? Is one of those closing, what would be the 2022 reality?
Mm-hmm. I think the ultimate plan is for the Lakewood. Lakewood really isn't a transportation compound. It's not other than being able to park buses. I think the long range plan is, or short range, once the new compound is constructed, if it's constructed, then our thinking has been that at some point we would close the Lakewood compound.
Well, I guess to us, where are we having that discussion?
Facilities master planning, that's where it's been mentioned.
So facilities master planning is, this decision needs to be made and politicized, honestly, communicated to the folks. This is one of the last, which would be 2021, but there's 2 years. So we're going to go through the entire facilities master plan before we decide between those two properties where it's going.
It may be done before, may be done after. That's what the facilities master planning sessions will be for. But that's what has been discussed before this meeting, and it's what was pointed out in this presentation.
Okay, I apologize. There's one more thing. Can you explain what type of, or to what depth any conversations have happened with MARTA around potential for collaboration, putting students on MARTA buses? Any talks around that?
We haven't had any, I guess, substantial conversations with MARTA lately. We meet with MARTA from time to time. We have partnerships with them regarding already existing partnerships with MARTA passes. Many of our high school locations are, they're already being serviced by MARTA. In many of the cases, if not all, there's a MARTA stop on each of our campuses. I'm not quite sure. I don't believe MARTA. We have actual MARTA stops on our middle school campuses. But as soon as we truly understand kind of what the district would like to see, from a MARTA involvement, we will engage MARTA and start having those conversations.
Candace? Nancy?
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
You're probably going to think I'm crazy, and maybe I am, but and I'm willing to pilot this if you are in North Atlanta, and this light bulb just went off, but there's an app that's Find My Friends, and if we put a phone on, I'm just telling you, I can tell you where people are right now and when they're driving down the road. And so if we took 10 buses and put an iPhone in there with this app for, say, elementary school parents, and they could just opt in and find my bus, could we just try it and see if it worked?
Mm-hmm.
Before you answer that, I am not the general counsel, but I would bet.
And the general counsel's not here at the moment.
I will bet that there are legal issues with that.
Well, we're talking about the same thing, putting an app on a bus.
If Apple would have an issue with us using that for commercial purposes.
Whoever made that would probably be able to.
But good thought. Good thought.
I was thinking, but my other question is, one of the things with getting bus drivers and getting qualified that will stay, are other cities in the country having that same problem or having successes? And do we know what they're doing that maybe we could do differently to entice better?
Mm-hmm. To answer the first question is, bus driver shortages. My colleagues all across the country are faced with the same sorts of challenges when it comes to finding bus drivers. Because with the, one of the reasons with the change, the uptick in the economy, it's just a lot of other opportunities for CDL drivers right now. But again, not just schoolhouses, industry, UPS, FedEx, everyone's having problems with bus drivers. To answer your question about what are other districts doing, some of the same things that we're doing. I don't believe that I've come across a district or have had a conversation with a district that is offering retention and signing bonuses like we are. And that's not to say that there aren't any ones out there doing it. I just haven't come across personally any other district that's actually doing it. So from that respect, I think we're a little bit ahead. In constant conversation with Sky Duckett and her team, her recruitment team, about different approaches that we can take. We have several military installations that are kind of in our backyard. Those may be some areas for retiring folks that we could tap and hopefully improve our situation. But we have our ears open. We're willing to try, just about any any avenue out there to to ensure that we're appropriately staffed from a bus driver standpoint.
Thank you.
I did want to say that, unfortunately, given the reality of the city, it is very expensive for bus drivers, teachers to live in the city. And if I'm a bus driver and I have a choice, I'm going to move, and I have to live in the metro area, there's no reason for me to drive to the city and work for APS just to make a little bit more, especially if it's going to cost a lot of money. So I know that we've had teachers leave the school system because it's too expensive to live in the city, and I am positive that we also have bus drivers who won't even apply to work for APS because it's way too expensive to live in the city. So that's another consideration. It's just the reality of where we are as a city. Michelle, and that's it.
Honestly, just some suggestions. I mean, Google's right here in our backyard, so is UPS. You saw me kind of mention Uber. It seems as though, I mean, we are kind of, it is Atlanta. We are a big urban school district. It seems as though we could ask some of our friends to come help us out in this dialogue and see if we can't create something that's sophisticated and unique and perfect for urban school districts that have very heavily congested traffic issues such as us. Just a suggestion.
And we've done that with UPS, with the squad, yeah.
So we've done some of that before. They were really helpful around, they focus more on training and helping us get stronger, better drivers, mechanics, just doing more around customer service. It was like 15, maybe 2015, 2016, and we've been implementing those things, and those things were really helpful. But as far as probably I think Jason was mentioning around the affordable housing and those kinds of issues. It's homelessness is up in the Atlanta area by 4.5%, and for even homeless families, bus drivers. I mean, anybody who's not able to make a real living and be in the city, that is a large part of our challenge. But we've had good partners with that. We've actually partnered with Delta. Delta was helping us on emergency issues, helping us plan for, strategy. I remember it was like chronic weather issues and even, giving us advice on how they manage planes in the air and when things get backlogged, how you can kind of catch up and things of that sort. So we've gone to all those different partners. I mean, they leaned in as hard as they could at the outset, and I think for us though, they're just some were mentioned earlier today. There are just some conditions that are out of our control. If everything has to be done by a yellow bus, by and large, that's difficult. There's nothing Delta or UPS can do for us on that. So they were working within. What they would say to us is basically, what are all your issues? Okay, of your 17 issues, we can help you with 2. The rest you're going to have to figure out on your own. But all of them that you've named, I don't think we did anything with Uber, but Google. But I do remember those 2 in particular, and they were great partners in it, helping us get off the ground. I also just wanted to say that, what was the other comment? About the app stuff. I mean, where we are, just to be realistic, where we are is that we can be as creative as we want to try to be, but probably for the purposes of our capacity and our ability to do stuff with technology, we would really need to find someone who can professionally manage that app. And there are some things that are available to school systems now, but we really need to kind of start there. And anything else that gets creative, I agree, would have to be a pilot. But at minimum, I do think we need to stay the course on finding something that is tested, where somebody else is looking at the technology, where we can legally protect our kids, not have everybody and their grandmother know where a bus is or a child is. There are just a lot of other things that we have to consider. So I want us to be very thoughtful about that. And then I wanted to just point out on slide 18, the thing about the bus locations. I think one board member say, so when we do facility master planning, we're going to choose between these 2. I do not think that's true. There are potentially other sites. They're just not our sites, right? Other people own them or other people have them. So I think a little bit of what we need to do in our planning and our discussion is have a conversation with the board about, hey, if this over here would be the perfect site for us, would we be willing to trade off on some other things that we have that are valuable to be able to get a better, different location. So I'm hoping that people stay very open-minded going into facility master planning around the transportation piece. And if you have any ideas about where you've seen stuff or you think there might be a good site, share that with us so we have time to research it and tell you whether or not we think we can get that to the table for consideration. But I just don't want us to think that we only have those two locations. I think those two locations can be leveraged perhaps for something else that might be better for us. But his point, meaning our COO's point, is here are the two you have. Birds in hand. If you want to make it happen sooner rather than later without a bunch of negotiations and stuff, you could do something there. Is it the right thing to do? Maybe, maybe not. Is it ideal? Probably not. Again, share with us any thoughts and ideas that you have, so on and so forth. And then I just wanted to say my point about the homelessness. It's about chronic homelessness, people who have mental health issues year after year. They're moving all around the greater metro area. That's what's actually up in Atlanta, and that typically affects our students. And I'll share one personal story, and I just want to be clear, like those kids that we're talking about, it's a handful, but it's incredibly cost prohibitive when you're doing one kid and you're going all over the place in one big yellow bus. But I don't know if y'all remember one of our valedictorians from Maynard Jackson, and she spent her entire senior year homeless. And I remember going to check out a transportation issue at Benteen, I think, and got on that school bus, and elementary school bus, and in the back, she was sleeping because they had picked her up so early from wherever they were at that time. She had to ride that bus from about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, go through all the elementary route so that she could finally end up at Maynard Jackson by the time school started. And so I think, Erica Long, as you're listening and stuff, I think we need to take the time to pull out some of these very explicit examples, because it's not just like the yellow bus issue, that's the money part, but like the kids are put through, I mean, they already have a challenging life situation, but what they have to do to get to school, to be able to stay the valedictorian, to be able, I mean, it's insane what they go through. So I think we should capture some of those stories, get some student and family testimony about it. It's not only a great way to save money, but it's also, I think it's incredibly difficult on the child. And in one case, this was a kid who was actually working very hard to be valedictorian and actually ended up going to Duke. So I've seen that with my own eyes, and even I was shocked because I'd never seen anything like that before. And there she was in the elementary school bus, and probably most parents would also say, why do we have high school with elementary? So it's been a bit of a challenge all around.
Yeah, no, I back to the question about if locating a secondary bus hub is important, then there's so many things around that consideration that I don't think are, like we're not asking the general public to go find us a lot. There are a lot of considerations that did go into that last location, so much so that we made a trade. We went through a process and made a trade for that property. So I just want to make sure, like, is the decision-making process, this has not been, 1 year, this has been since I've been on the board, that we need something in this northwest section of town that is adjacent to, major routes and whatnot. This just feels like it's a very, very high-tech decision about where this should be. So if we've had two sites that are sitting there that aren't quite what we need, I think it should completely be on the administration to make that recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Our last presenter is Lisa Bracken, who's going to do the monthly financial update and the final adoption recommendation for fiscal year 2020 budget.
All righty. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Karstafen. Today I'll be presenting 3 topics related to finance. First, I'll be providing you with the financials for FY 2019 for all activities occurring in the months of July through April within Fund 150. Next, I will present the need for one budget adjustment in FY 2019. And finally, I will give you an overview of the administration's recommendation for the FY 2020 budget, which will be before you this evening for final adoption. With the next 4 slides, we will cover the FY 2019 financials for the first nine months of the fiscal year. So far, we've collected about 89.4% of the total resources budgeted, with collections at 98.5% for local, state at 67.24%, and other, which includes the Fund 150 transfer, at 64.98%. We are currently tracking ahead of pace in all categories of revenue as compared to the FY18, and overall collections are 3.21 percentage points ahead of last year's pace. We will continue to monitor the pace of collections for the remainder of the fiscal year, but feel more confident that we'll meet our budget assumptions. On slide 5, we see the budget to actual expenditures so far for FY19. We have currently spent 77.89% of budgeted allotments, and spending in all functions is appropriate, but ahead of pace and ahead of trend for the previous year. Slide 6 represents the current spending trend for FY19 against the 18 trend. There is variation in spending function by function. Overall spend is 1.36 percentage points ahead of last year's pace, where the district spent 98.79% of total budget. Please remember the timing of large expenditures from one month to the next can greatly impact the percentage spend year over year, and detailed financials for all funds can be found in Agenda Item 12.05. We do have the need for one budget adjustment this month. I'm recommending an increase in both revenue and expenditures in the amount of $369,453 for the state-funded facility safety bond grant. Details are in Agenda Item 9.01. For your information, we have also provided a special revenue report for adjustments less than $1 million that occurred in the month of May in Agenda Item 12.06. And with that, I transition to the presentation of the FY19 final budget. We've been working towards this budget since August, and countless people have put in countless hours to ensure this budget aligns to the strategies and priorities of the district while ensuring efficiency and fidelity with taxpayer dollars. I appreciate the work of the Budget Commission, chaired by Nancy Meister, the budget team led by Jay Vanicki, senior cabinet, especially Sky Duckett and her team for the work around compensation, and the Budget Center managers, principals, and department heads who work with us to maximize resources for students. I also want to thank Go Teams, BFAC, and other members of the community, especially those that came to our 4 regional meetings, who devote time and effort to ensure that we are presenting the best budget for FY 2020. The following 3 slides align with the FY20 recommended budget to the board adopted parameters. These 3 slides have not changed since I presented them last month for the tentative adoption. I will remind people of one item on the slide, however. This budget funds a $12 million compensation strategy that includes teachers and instructional support pay raises at an average of $2,000 per teacher, or 3.3%. Non-teacher pay raises include a step increase for all eligible employees and a 1% increase for pay grades 111 through 124. One-time payments are budgeted for eligible employees off step. This budget also continues to support pay parity work for school resource officers, JROTC instructors, and position reclassifications. However, all these investments in compensation do fall short of what the governor has recommended, of what HR recommends, and from the scenario that this board supported at our April Budget Commission meeting. Once we can be certain of a recurring revenue stream that supports these additional initiatives, either outlined through the IGA with the city or through additional revenue in local digest, we hope to roll out the $18.5 million compensation proposal, which does include an average of $3,000 per teacher. Details of the various compensation proposals can be found on the budget website in the February, March, April Budget Commission materials. Even as we adopt this budget, there are still some unknowns that we will be continuing to monitor and address, if necessary, at our August board meeting through budget amendments. Items still outstanding include the Consolidated Tax Digest and resolution of the negotiated TAD IGA. We have amended the revenue projections since the tentative adoption to adjust for final QBE numbers, a $2.6 million state grant for safety and security. We talked about that earlier tonight. Earlier today, and an increase in available Title IV funds being consolidated at the school level. We've made corresponding increases in expenditures for state grants and consolidated funds. And while we have finalized an allocation for partners at $42.5 million, we are still awaiting final QBE sheets for the state to finalize the charter allocations. As I mentioned before, there are still some priorities that have not been funded in this budget. These include an increased investment in transportation, additional investments in compensation, and the restoration of reserve and contingency budgets. Altogether, these total $10.7 million. However, if additional revenues do become available, either through the payments committed within the TAD IGA or through higher than anticipated local revenue, we will begin to allocate these funds accordingly based on this prioritized list. The FY20 general fund budget is equal to $854 million and includes approximately $16.53 million in consolidated federal funds. This slide represents the general fund budget recommended by state function code. Slide 15 breaks down the general fund budget by object code grouping. When reviewing this table, it is important to recall that as Woodson Park transitions to a partner school for FY20, funds will be decreased across the various object groups and will be consolidated in professional services. The FY20 tentative budget assumes 4.4% growth in new recurring revenue with a corresponding increase in expenditures. The overall increase from the FY19 originally adopted budget is $35.78 million. This recommended budget neither uses nor grows fund balance. We are forecasting a beginning fund balance for FY 2020 of $70.3 million, or about 8.23% of total expenditures. In order to increase the fund balance to 10% and strengthen the financial position of this district, we would need to add about $15 million to the fund balance. However, with the $10 million one-time payment that was due to the district through the TAD IGA this past January, fund balance would be at 9.4%. We have seen slide 18 before, which illustrates the history of fund balance for APS. The total budget for FY 2020 for final adoption tonight is equal to $1,139,128,567. The entire budget, including special revenues, SPLOST, nutrition, and student activity funds as presented at the April Budget Commission meeting, as well as the detailed department and school program sheets, can be found in Agenda Item 9.02. The board will hold its second and final public hearing on this budget tonight at 6, but even after final adoption this evening, our work towards this budget will not be done. The board still must set a millage rate once the consolidated digest is available. Setting the millage will require advertisements, additional public hearings, and additional action by the board, potentially at a called meeting over the summer. This budget is based on a millage of 20.74 mils, reflective of the 1 mil rollback the board approved last year. The consolidated digest is again delayed, creating uncertainty in the timeline and process and creating both budgetary and cash flow issues. Once the digest is received, we will calculate the rollback rate, which we will be using for advertising purposes. For FY 2020, if new revenue is generated, the district could fill funding gaps and/or restore fund balance with that additional revenue. On slide 21, we have prepared a draft timeline for discussion purposes only. If property notices were to be sent out tomorrow, and there is no indication that they will be, the earliest bills could go out is July 30th. Because of the uncertainty around billing, we are teeing up for a TAN or tax anticipation note. If this becomes necessary, we will be prepared to discuss this topic at the millage meeting in preparation to take action at the August board meeting. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Michelle, anyone else? All right.
Thank you, Lisa. It's great. Very comprehensive. Any idea from Fulton County? Nothing. We're
No, so
still in the abyss.
we're in the habit now. We just call every Monday morning to get a status update.
Okay.
And still, we're hearing it's just technical issues in calculating the exemptions.
And just to be clear, we're talking about 17 and 18.
So this is the 19 billing.
And
17 and
19.
18 has not been resolved either.
Okay, so we're talking about 17, 18, and 19 with a call every Monday morning. Okay, very good. Thank you.
What's the deadline for them having their stuff fixed? Isn't it, well, the deadline for having valuations fixed, but that the State Department of Revenue gave them, I thought it was 2019, or they would be fined again.
I can double check that.
Do you know which thing I'm talking
I
about?
believe that, so yes, they do actually, each year they have to do an assessment, a full assessment of the digest, and I believe that's every 3 years, and I do believe that's back up in 2019, so that is a deadline that they have to meet.
And for the general public, I think that's where in 2016, Fulton County was fined a couple $1 million for not having the.
Right, I think at that time they were undervalued at residential, and that's where the fines came in at that point. They will say that they have done the work to correct that, and that's where the big increases came in, which led to the high number of appeals, which froze the digest last year and the year before that. So,
and there are reports. 2019 is I'm not sure, but it was in 2016 when they were last fined. And I think they were given until 2019 to fix it. But then there are also reports that they're undervalued commercial property.
I've seen that in the media as well.
In the city. Okay. Anyone else? Lisa, look at you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll take it.
Mr. General Counsel, is there need to enter into executive session?
There is, Mr. Chairman, the board needs to discuss student and personnel items.
Can I get a motion to enter into executive session? It's been properly moved by Ishay Collins.
Second.
Seconded by Cynthia Briscoe Brown. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now retreat into executive session. Good evening, everyone, both here in the auditorium and watching from home. Before I move into my official remarks, I want to congratulate the nearly 2,500 newly minted graduates of the Atlanta Public Schools class of 2019. As a board, we were overwhelmed with the academic, athletic, and artistic accomplishments of our students, as well as their poise, enthusiasm, and citizenship. We could not be more proud of this cohort of students. I want to thank Dr. Kostarfin and her team for showing the city, the state, and the nation, indeed the world, that no one puts on high school graduation like Atlanta Public Schools. Ceremony after ceremony, we celebrated and highlighted some accomplishments in a way that exemplifies the excellence our kids and families deserve. Not only did we celebrate these students inside of McCamish Pavilion at Georgia Tech in grand fashion, we also broadcasted their stories far and wide through social media, especially through Dr. Kostarfin's and the district's Twitter accounts. And I really encourage everyone to revisit the ceremonies by tuning into the live stream and looking at the videos there. You can also visit the district's Talk Up blog, which featured stories that are uplifting and tear-jerking in many instances of more than 6 of our amazing students. Dr. Kostarfin, I know you want to provide your own thanks to specific individuals and teams in your own remarks, but I want everyone to know how much we enjoyed and appreciated this year's graduation. And now for my official remarks. Let me remind folks that tonight's board meeting will be the last regular meeting for the 2018-2019 school year. We do not plan on meeting in July, although I looked last year, we did have a special meeting related to the taxes and millage rate, so hopefully we won't have that this year, although we might. I believe that this board, working in collaborative fashion with the APS staff, has performed with such efficiency and effectiveness that I don't think we need a meeting in July, although we haven't had meetings in July in a couple years. That doesn't mean that the work will end, though. This board will continue to work with Dr. Starfin and her staff and all of the principals and teachers, and particularly our school sites, to get ready for the 2019-2020 school year. We look forward to seeing everyone back at school on Monday, August 12th, but prior to that, we will have a board meeting on Monday, August 5th. In the spirit of recognizing deserving individuals, the board and I want to recognize a legendary educator, principal, associate superintendent, and head of school who has decided to retire at the end of this year. We really cannot say enough about Don Duran, who has served as head of schools for Charles R. Drew Charter for the past 10 years. And when I say he is a legend, Mr. Duran's career with Atlanta Public Schools stretches back to when he joined the district back in 1973, before some of us up here were born. For 32 years, he progressed through the district to become a principal and then associate superintendent and what was called at the time an executive director. Even when he retired the first time, he joined Outward Bound Atlanta as executive director to provide support for our students. And when Drew Charter needed an experienced and guiding hand at the helm, Mr. Duran took the call, and for 10 years, he laid a groundwork of innovation and teaching that will serve Drew and the APS community for decades to come. We are sad to see him go, but Mr. Duran created a fantastic succession plan, and we now have a new head of schools at Drew Charter, Mr. Peter McKnight. Mr. Duran's not here yet, but I think we should give him a round of applause anyway. I think he's coming. Michelle Olympia. Oh yeah, we did start early. There we go. So when he comes, we'll briefly break and take a picture with him. So thank you, Mr. Duran, and best wishes on the next stage of your exciting career. I'd also like to remind folks that the month of June has been recognized as LGBTQ Pride Month to provide for a series of events, recognitions, memorials, and celebrations in honor of those in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities. The purpose of this month is to recognize the impact that members of these communities have had on our community, our state, our nation, and the world. The month of June was chosen because it commemorates the Stonewall riots, which occurred at the end of June 1969. For years, many pride events and marches were held during this month, and in 1994, many educational organizations chose to recognize the entire month for commemoration. As a system, we continue to strive to be a school district that is safe and welcoming for our LGBTQ students, and we are proud to join them in the celebration of this month. June is also National Caribbean American Heritage Month, which has been celebrated officially since 2006. This month recognizes the contributions of the diverse immigrants who have come to America to help realize the American dream of a melting pot society that honors and promotes inclusive prosperity. As a Puerto Rican, a Caribbean American myself, I am happy that the board and the school district is celebrating this month. I'd like to recognize Mr. Michael Thomas, who's in the crowd from the Caribbean American Cultural Arts Foundation. And I'd also like to shout out board member Erica Mitchell for ensuring that we celebrate this month, this Caribbean American Heritage Month in June. Now we will break because Mr. Don Duran is here himself. Mr. Duran, if you want to come forward. All right. Thanks again, Mr. Duran, for coming here this evening. And now I want to give an update on the year-end evaluation of the superintendent, Dr. Maria Christarfin. As allowed by state law, we can conduct such evaluations out of public view because it allows the board to provide honest feedback to the superintendent in a way that is consistent with how employees in the district receive feedback respectfully and privately. We reviewed the superintendent's performance related to carrying out key responsibilities of her role, such as achieving targeted performance goals on graduation rate, making progress on our 5-year strategic plan, continuing to lead the tough work of formulating a multi-year budgeting strategy in the face of internal and external pressures, continuing the successful implementation of the district's journey of transformation, setting the stage for increases in student achievement through the implementation of our school turnaround strategy, and improving employee engagement and district culture across the system. We are on target with the 5-year strategic plan, and Dr. Christarfin continues to be the strong leader that the district needs as we strive to create a caring culture of trust and collaboration and a system the community can trust. I am pleased to report that Dr. Christarfin has kept the district on a path towards meeting and in many cases exceeding the board's expectation in each area of focus. I want to thank Dr. Christarfin on behalf of the board for her passion and her service to the students and families of Atlanta Public Schools. This board looks forward to continued progress under her leadership. I now invite Dr. Christarfin to make her own remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I am exceptionally proud of our district. We have a huge charge ahead of us, and I know it has been a lot of ups and downs over the last 5 years, but I think the community will see, especially as we close out this year and get our final results, that the district is indeed continuing to move in the right direction. I always say, and I mean it again tonight, that no superintendent does this work alone. We have an entire school community and greater city of Atlanta that really wants the best for their children, including opportunities for work and career and college when they leave Atlanta Public Schools. That is possible when really good people stay with APS, work hard every day to achieve our mission for college and career readiness, and that is done by and large by many of the people on the front lines, our support staff, our teachers, our principals, the folks who are working day in and day out directly with kids and their families. So I want to thank them for making it possible for us to see the results that we are seeing. Of course, there are a lot of people behind the scenes, especially in central office, who have really rethought and redone how they do their work, making sure that we're serving schools better, that we're pushing resources out to schools, and that we serve schools where they are, not where we think they should be, but we set goals together to try to achieve it as a team. I am incredibly grateful for the people I work with every day in not just my office, but who often sit here at the board table every day. David Jernigan, Lisa Bracken, Sky Duckett, Larry Hoskins, Erica Long, Bill Carich, Angela King-Smith, Glenn Brock, all are with me every day in this work, and they know that I touch them every day about what's happening in APS to make sure that we are on top of as much as possible. And I just, I'm excited to be here in Atlanta. I still love this work. I want to be sure that we finish the job that we started, and I want to make a continued commitment to be better. I know that we haven't, we may be improving, but we haven't hit all the targets the way that we want to. And but I have great hope and faith in the people of Atlanta, and I know that our families love their kids very much, and I do too. And so Thank you, board, for setting pretty high targets and expectations. And it's something that I enjoy trying to meet and strive to do. And I appreciate you seeing and understanding that work. So thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, for your leadership and time with me when we've needed to do hard work behind the scenes, but to the entire board and the board office for supporting the superintendent's office and all that we're trying to do on the implementation side. So congratulations to everyone else. You've done a lot of lifting and pushing and pulling, and you make it a wonderful place to want to work and achieve for children. So thank you so much. I'll continue with more celebrations. It is true, we had a great graduation. We moved sites, and it was seamless. There were no significant problems. Our families were amazing. They followed every rule, but it was all created and done really by one man that I have to shout out, Dr. Isaac Sparks. Hopefully he's taking a nap. There he is. Put the camera on that man. Stand up, no, stand up, stand up, stand up. There he is. Oh my goodness. He is a dream and a taskmaster, and got everybody whipped into shape, including Dan Sims, which is often impossible to do. But Dan and David Jernigan and others and principals, we were counting kids, following every step of the way, wanting to know exactly what was happening where. But it's Dr. Sparks also got us in shape, but got our volunteers pulled together. All those people are working for free, after hours and everything else to execute the ceremonies with excellence. I also want to say thank you to Georgia Tech and the former president, Bud Peterson, for making it possible as well. Bobby Moncrief over facilities. They just got tons of compliments about how he engaged with the Georgia Tech staff. So we are so grateful for his work as well, along with Larry Hoskins. The chief of police, is Chief Applin here tonight? You give him a big round of applause too. All about, de-stressing the environment, making sure that we didn't escalate issues. And so our SROs were amazing. I thank Georgia Tech for allowing us to use our officers, which isn't a common practice for them, but they trusted us, and I think that we did a great job of showing that we could keep people safe, feel welcome and respected at our events. Thank you to everyone. I also want to thank our communications team. They were constantly pushing out videos in real time, trying to make things better when there were hiccups with technology. But our tech department and our comms department, under the leadership of Ian Smith and Femi, we had a great experience with the two of them as well. I want to say thank you to Jasmine, who does a lot of the APS social media and Twitter. So she was around everyone, trying to make it feel special for every single school and their unique culture and kind of style, and I really think we were able to pull that together. I encourage everyone to go look at the blog and go back and re-watch on live stream our kids, their speeches, their experiences. You couldn't come out of a graduation with a dry eye. So it is true. I'm a 3-time superintendent, and I can tell you there's not a single graduation in APS that doesn't have me on the edge of my seat, just wanting to know what our kids are going to say and how our parents and community are going to respond to them. So thank you, everyone, especially our parents for making and our students for making the class of 2019 so memorable. And thank you especially to Georgia Tech for allowing us to have this special celebration in one of our special universities right here in Atlanta. Moving on to my formal remarks about the work session. It was all fun. It was really great, but not as exciting as graduation, where we saw 2,499 kids cross the stage. But we did get to hear Connie Brown, the auditor, talk about her plan for the independent review of the district's performance and financial records. She is completely committed to an efficient, accurate approach to how we do this so that APS stays within the expectations of the law and this board. There are many things that she looks at, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight around her recommendations, around crowdfunding efforts, around enhancing clarity around booster organizations, and employing tools in the nutrition department to reduce food waste and improve school-based cash management practices. And so that's just a little of what she does. But I think the biggest thing that Connie Brown has done through her leadership, professionalism, and really a collaborative spirit is make our audit department, with the support of our audit, not commission, committee? No, it's a committee, okay. Our audit committee, led by the board, is that we moved from when we started in 2014-15 from an audit department that was buried in doing investigations around the cheating scandal to one that actually is doing the work that an auditor is supposed to do. And so that did not happen by accident. There was a lot of rethinking of the department itself, rethinking leadership and support staff, but also having a vision to make it possible for us to really get back to the work of auditing. And that has been done by the board and by the new leader of our audit department. So thank you both for making that possible for APS. Next, Erica Long, the Senior Advisor for Policy and Government Affairs, did the recap of the 2019 legislative session and how we progressed. There were a lot of challenges we had along the way, but we spent a lot of our time educating legislators, and thankfully they were listening to us about some of the unique pieces about APS. But some high-level things that were important was that amended budget that provided about $30,000 per school for safety measures that the governor did. Also, the salary increase for teachers. We targeted trying to protect our tax base, our collectible tax base, and wanted to ensure that we kept our longstanding charter guidance around coterminous growth with annexation. And so the governor and the legislature this year was very much so supportive of what was happening in Atlanta Public Schools, and we are so appreciative of all of our elected officials for ensuring that APS had a successful experience in the legislature this year. We still have work to do. We talked in the session about transportation and some other things, and making sure that we keep our eye on our collectible tax base. But in the interim, I want to just shout out Erica for being a great advocate for APS and a great leader for us. She was there every single day and was constantly addressing issues in real time, and that's not something we've ever had in the past. So thank you for your leadership and for doing such a great job during the session. Matt Underwood, our new Executive Director for Innovation, provided a report on the progress of charter schools and a separate report on our partnership schools. We learned that the charter schools' academic achievement is generally strong, with academic performance in partnership schools showing more mixed results in the early stages of our partnership model. But both charter and partnership school organizations have demonstrated strong fiscal management, which is something that we also have to keep an eye on since the board did endorse through their actions authorizing not only charter schools but the contracts for us to have partnership schools. Per the request of the board, Larry Hoskins, our Chief Operations Officer, provided an update on transportation. This year, we used 422 buses on 293 routes, over 21,000 miles transporting kids every day, with more than 32,000 kids on those buses each school day. He outlined some of the challenges, including the nationwide bus driver shortage and mechanic shortage. For the upcoming school year, we're looking at opening some of our school buildings, a little couple earlier for bus students, adding additional buses to Grady and North Atlanta clusters, and expanding the work calendar for fleet staff and improving communications. All of this will be possible in an app to help our families track our school buses and can plan accordingly to be at stops. But all of this is baked into the budget that you're considering for discuss on the consent agenda. And so I just wanted to be sure that people knew this is part of what we would be doing in our action tonight. Lisa Bracken took you through the fiscal year 2019 monthly financial update, as well as our recommendation for the adoption of the fiscal year 2020 budget, which will be formally submitted during the discussion and action part of our agenda. The budget has posed some considerable challenges for the district. It represents months and months of work on behalf of the Budget Commission, led by Board Member Nancy Meister, where we've had to make some tough choices about what we can afford and what we could not afford. The input through 2 public hearings and at least 4 community meetings are also included in that information. Because we still don't have the official digest from Fulton County, this budget is based on conservative growth, around about 4% for the board's consideration. Because of that and the fact that we still don't have the official payment through our intergovernmental agreement with the City of Atlanta, which was a settlement related to the West Side TAD and all other TADs, we remain hesitant to pass on the full amount of the state-approved teacher raises until the revenue source is more stable, not just a one-time, but also the second part of that IGA, which has a recurring payment in it as well from the East Side TAD. So please know that the budget does not include the full raises still that the board absolutely wanted to provide and the administration wanted to recommend. The budget does include, however, $12 million in compensation increases for employees. Teacher and instructional staff will receive a step increase and a percentage increase of their pay scale, which equals to about $2,000 on average per teacher. That's a 3.3% raise, not the 4.8% raise they would have received if they got the $3,000. We also put a $1,000 one-time payment for eligible employees who are not on a step. Non-teacher pay raises is a step and a 1% increases for pay grades 111 through 124. That's about a 2.4% increase. A step only for pay grades above 125. That's about a 1.2% increase, and a $700 one-time payment for eligible employees who are off step. So this means that in addition to giving the raises, the board went a step further. You're continuing to address pay parity by increasing school resource officer holidays, adjusting the JROTC instructional work schedule, and supporting some positions and reclassifications. I'd like to thank ASME for helping us go through a lot of that detailed work with JROTC and our SROs to make it possible for us to get where we are today. While this is not everything we wanted to do, we do intend to provide the full package of pay raises if we're able to secure the additional revenue that is owed to us from the City of Atlanta in the coming months. It would have to be a retroactive approach that would go back to the start of the school year as far as we could. But in this budget, we continue to meet other obligations. We still have that city pension. It's sitting at $56.6 million. That's up 3% from last year. The rising TRS cost, that's another $1.6 million. And that's up to 21.14% of a salary. So there's some back-breaking numbers in this budget, but we have covered them. We also put in money for textbooks, $2.5 million, and this year, $420 million of the $851 million is going directly into school budgets, and that is a big lift. This did not happen, again, by ourselves. Of course, the board was doing its work, as was the administration. But GO teams and principals are the ones who are responsible for making those school allocations work in the best interest of our students. Once flow-through dollars, funding spent centrally directly on school efforts, is taken into account. The central office departments actually account for less than 10% of the tentative budget, and that is down from over 13% from last year. So so we are still streamlining central office, and we're still pushing more dollars into schools. So we faced some budget challenges and some surprises. I was really surprised that we didn't get the money that we settled to receive, and we are still depending on that for our teachers and our raises, and to be able to do that, over time, because once you put in the raise, you got to keep paying for it forever. So, but I think that Lisa Bracken and her team, and she, like I said, she has a mind that does not stop on the numbers and is constantly coming up with scenarios and opportunities. That all of that is due to her. So thank you, Lisa, for doing such a great job and making it possible for us to do that. I know that when we were doing the budget hearing, we had one community member ask about, positions at one particular high school. I think it was Douglas. But I just want to make it clear that, the $10 million that's owed to us, because it's not recurring, we can't bring positions in on that. That restores fund balance and then tees us up for the recurring funds. That's what we use to restore any cuts. So in addition to the raises, the board, I had to go pull it, but I just want to remind the board, you talked through in your budget commission meeting the prioritized list for unfunded work that you still want to do. And other monies that accounts for about $10.7 million include you wanting to put more money in transportation, teacher and instruction support for the pay raises, which we just talked about, and the one-time payments, non-teacher raises and one-time payments, which would, close out the rest of it. The pay parity piece, including more supplements, bus monitors, and special ed, parapros, to get to full-time with benefits. You also want to do teacher career pathway stipends. And here's the other part that I think the chair was going to mention. It's about school reserves. You still have $2.7 million that you want to put back in school reserves when we get that recurring money. And then we had an operations contingency because we always have facility issues that surprise us in any given year. It totals about $10.7 million, but that is what you said, and that's where we would start as soon as we get our money from the city. So we have a plan for it. It's to do the very things that people are talking about, but the money has to come in for us to be able to commit it. And the board did not push back on the idea of us retroactively providing that for our schools if necessary. So we have to have the money to do it, but we agree with the community comment that those things do need to be done. The money is there, it just needs to be paid to APS. As I wrap up my 5th year as superintendent, I just wanted to again say thank you for the feedback on the evaluation, and to also say that these are the kind of strategic challenges we've been facing. We wanted to improve those low graduation rates, under-enrolled schools, low academic achievement gaps, restoring trust with the community that was shattered by the scandal. Thousands of negatively impacted students or affected students needed to be addressed. Willingness to get partners to invest in the district and be partners with us. Infrastructure and systems updating, and making sure that we have the right people in place to do this work. And so while, yes, it's been a really big challenge, I didn't name all the other things, including the surprises that come along the way. Like I said, I do think we're moving in the right direction. We talked a little bit about the 2,500 students who crossed the stage, but I want to just add, our students earned more than $154 million in scholarships. That's 11 million more than the previous class, and about 17 million of that were due to more than 1,000 kids graduating and earning that Achieve Atlanta scholarship. That's the last dollar assistance if they go on to a 2-year or a 4-year college or technical program. And so that is very significant for us, because they also are tracking what happens once kids are leaving or are in college. Seeing them to and through college is a big part of their vision. That class is on track to earn more than 10,222 APIB dual enrollment credits, of which is 1,300 more than the class of 2018 and nearly twice as many as the class of 2015. So our kids are taking more rigorous courses, and that is going to pay off for them as they go to college. I also just wanted to highlight, if you were not at graduation, there were kids who graduated with an associate's degree and received their high school diploma on graduation day. So if you are in school in APS and you know your family situation and you don't think that you can afford college and anything else while you are in high school, we will help you, and you don't have to pay for it. You've got to do the dual enrollment. You've got to get involved in the upcoming opening College and Career Academy. Take advantage of what's happening in your schools now, but the board has approved that College and Career Academy, and that is going to open up even more chances for our kids. I also want to say, while we don't have the graduation results, right, for 2019, we do know that the graduation rate moved up 20.8 percentage points from 59.1 to 79.9 by 2018. And I cannot wait to see what happens with this latest cohort of 2019. That data will come out and be confirmed in October, and you will hear from me first on exactly what happened and how it happened at every single high school. The College and Career Ready Performance Index, known as CCRPI, 34 schools scored above 70. Of that, 14 of them achieved an overall score above 80, and 5 achieved an overall score above 90. APS earned a score of 73.4 out of 100, with the average CCRPI score for the state being 76.6. We're at 73.4. They're at 76.6. We are closing that gap. Now, CCRPI is not out yet. Milestones is not out yet. But by the end of the summer, again, you're going to hear about APS performance. Everybody knows they've been working hard. And as of 2018, the old data, as we go out of this school year, we had achieved the highest gains to date. We saw really great results even for Beat the Odds. But new data will be coming in. You'll hear about that. And we're also equally as enthusiastic about what that outcome is going to be as well. APS exceeded the state, and we were second among large metro districts when it came to beating the odds. And I think that that's really impressive because half of our schools, 46 of them, performed better than schools with similar demographics. 17 of the APS turnaround schools saw improvement over the last 2 years by reducing the number of beginning learners. Early childhood, we've opened seats by like almost 200 seats for our kids, and compared from 5 years ago to today. We also are doing a lot around supporting kids in athletics and arts as well, and technology. We are doing, thanks to Bill Karich and his team, 100% online testing with like no hiccups. They have done a great job of ensuring that APS is completely on top of that transition, which was expected by the state. We have our virtual academy partnering with CRIM. We're going to do the first full-time virtual program, and that is going to be 24/7 access for our kids so that they can get access to their courses no matter what their lives are like. I just have to shout out under talent management, Tracy Pendley, who was just received an acknowledgement from the City Council today, is our 4th grade teacher at Burgess Peterson, who won the 2020 Georgia Teacher of the Year by the State School Superintendent Richard Woods. That is the first time in almost 4 decades that APS has had a Teacher of the Year for the state. So congratulate, somebody was clapping. I think it's okay to clap. Thank you. Because Emily, you were there with me. Thank you. It was a great night. Terrelyn Rivers Cannon, who works with families at Washington and Thicket, was named the National School Social Worker of the Year by the School Social Workers Association of America. We have 2 honorees for Atlanta Families Awards. One of our principals from Benteen, Dr. Andrew Lovett, and Ashley Spatz, a music teacher at Burgess Peterson. We began the school year with all of our principal positions filled, only 9 vacancies. Thank you, Sky Duckett and the HR team and David Jernigan. It's the 5th consecutive year where APS has had fewer than 10 vacancies on day one. Looking forward to you getting to 0. So, hope springs eternal. We're expanding our training for principals, hiring for teacher quality. The principal satisfaction with quality applicants is up from 56% to 66%. APS has reached a record high ability to provide substitutes when a teacher is absent. We went from 88% in 2014 to 98% in 2018. Again, thank you, HR, for changing that system and making it possible for us to get to substitutes ASAP. Systems and resources, also exciting. You heard about the Student Success Funding Model. We're pushing more dollars to schools. That's increased by 34%. The general administration has declined by 7%. So we have a lot of good news around making sure the dollars are going to schools, not fattening central office. We expanded our school security. You've heard about that. We have body-worn cameras. We have Sandy Hook Say Something anonymous reporting system. We've done everything that in the state that anybody's asked us to do, and we're looking forward to using that $30,000 per school to increase safety and security. We've made strides to close the digital divide. You've heard about the Sprint 1 Million project. We got 2,300 hotspot smartphones, tablets to 9th graders. Also, T-Mobile helped us with 6th and 7th graders. We're nearly 5,000 laptops and more than 3,000 hotspots were distributed just this year. And finally, I'll end on culture, which I believe is critical to our success. Culture will eat your strategy for breakfast every single day. It's the most important thing, but the last thing to change. But we're seeing positive increases. Engagement scores went up from 29% in 2016 to 45% in 2019. The district is on par with other K-12 organizations across the country regarding the percent of those engaged, not engaged, and actively disengaged. And that is all Angela King Smith, educating and lifting and supporting principals, along with associate superintendents on how to create an environment where teachers are happy. Also, our managers are doing that as well and other departments, but it is critical that we move the system as a whole. Since November 2014, APS has either established or reestablished more than 350 partners, raising $72 independent million in special revenue. This year, grant awards were up 10%, and that means the partnership office has raised more than $11 million to support the district's unfunded components of the transformation strategy. That is all Rachel Sprecher, who is always out and working hard. So I thank you so much for being with us and for having such a great team. I know many of them are transitioning this year, but you know how to build and grow people and make them inspired to keep growing and going. So thank you again. Our GO teams and cluster advisory teams are in place. We have nearly 400 new members recently elected to the seats. In spring of 2019, more than 4,000 stakeholders voted in the GO team election process. So there's a lot going on in APS. Of course, there are many people who remind us that it's not perfect. I'm one who will agree. But we are still making the all call to our entire school community to please continue to support us and help us. We can't do this work alone, and our kids really need us. Atlanta deserves and must have an educated workforce, and since we serve so many children, it is critical that APS does its job. And that leads us to the summer, because when school is out, right, we got to go into summer school. It was rethought for last summer. In fact, today was when programs got it started for Power Up Summer Initiative. The knowledge retention over the summer break has always been a concern for educators across the country. Summer Slide accounts for as much as 85% of the reading achievement gap between poor students and non-poor students, and all students show a slide in skills after a long summer break. So Power Up is essential. We need people to go. If you have not registered to go tomorrow and register. We want your kids in our programs. It's also an opportunity for students to not just participate in programs, but breakfast, lunch, and transportation are included. Again, those programs started today. We have a rich portfolio of partners who are offering a lot of really cool stuff. So I encourage you to go to our website at www.atlantapublicsschools.us/powerup. I also wanted to shout out a couple of great things that have happened as we're going out at the end of this year. I want to acknowledge the Maynard Jackson a high school girls track team, which placed third in state championships for Class 5A. Naya Andrews won Class 5A 300-meter hurdles. Big deal. The state championship for Drew Charter School's golf team, they won another state championship. The varsity team for Drew won for Class A. Team members are Solomon Dobbs. Please stand. I know you're out there. Look at them. Solomon Dobbs, Anthony Ford, Christopher McCrary, Trevion McCurdy, Connor Mason, Miles Richardson, and an alternate, Jalen Cook, brought it home. Come on down, meet the board, and get some snuggles. Congratulations. Thank you for my signed golf ball. I will cherish it because one of you must be the next Tiger Woods, please, so that I have something for my retirement. Yes, and my cat. Thank you so much. And just a little bit of trivia about this team. This is the first all African American team to win a state championship. So thank you. And congratulations again. We're really proud of y'all. I also wanted to take a moment to express a formal farewell to an outstanding colleague who has worked with me for, I think it's a decade now, in 2 urban school districts. She is transitioning, and her name is Tammy Workman. She is our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. She joined the district 5 years ago after working in Austin for more than several years, but during my several years there. And she is going to be transitioning back with her family. But under her leadership, we have a strong champion for whole child development, which included providing more wraparound services than we've ever had for students, improving their academic, emotional, social, emotional, and mental and physical health, both inside and outside of school. Her most lasting contribution, I think, is the foundational work for social and emotional learning. It would not have been possible without you. You are an expert in the field. You are loved by people nationally and globally. I hope that you continue to do that work, but you have given our kids bigger hearts for your smarts. And so I am just so appreciative of that. I love you. I know I will miss you, but I just wanted to publicly thank you for everything you've done for Atlanta Public Schools. As part of that transition, on your HR report, we are recommending Dr. Katika Lovett as the new Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. She has been an unbelievable head of our special education department. She has also been our coordinator for special ed, had such a significant role in overseeing all the improvements in compliance and academic and behavioral, helped us get out of disproportionality. I mean, just a champion in this work. And so I'm looking forward to her expanding all of her talents to fill those big shoes that Tammy Workman is leaving behind. So, but thank you so much, both of you, for all that you're doing and have done for APS. I'll finish my formal remarks by reminding everyone that we have to go back to school. And so the Back to School Bash is on Saturday, August 10th at the Georgia World Congress Center. For the Bash, we're partnering with more than 50 community organizations and businesses to give APS families the resources they need for a safe and successful school year. The Bash will include school registration information, health screening, on-site transfer applications for families. We're doing the backpacks, bicycles, hopefully. I mean, we just do as much as we can to support our families. So it's a great way to learn about APS, but also kind of get ready for school. So those supply giveaways, those free activities, the event is open to the public, but I'm going to say one thing. This is not a place you come and just drop off your kid for APS to try to manage all day. Parents need to come with their children. We want to see you and the babies, the grown babies and the little ones, because we want to talk to you too. But this is not the time to think that it's a babysitting service. You know, during that time, parents have to be with their kids. We cannot accept children by themselves. So everybody needs to come with their family. Just remember, it's from pre-K to 12th grade, so we want to serve all of our kids, and there's also free parking. The Bash will make sure that all of our families get as much access to what we can do so that we can start day one on time with as many students as possible, with our attendance numbers and being ready for the first day of school. You can go to our website at www.atlantapublicschools.us/back-to-school. Thank you so much. I'm going to miss y'all over the summer, but you know where to find me. I'll be working here at APS. And but enjoy yourselves, get rejuvenated, and we'll see you for the Back to School Bash. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Now, will you please present the consent agenda?
Yes, I will do so briefly. Board members, I'm pleased to submit consent agenda items 5.01 through 8.03 for board approval. Oh, and heads up, 5.03 is that language access policy that Cynthia Briscoe Brown is getting so many compliments on, along with the other board policy committee members. And under finance, 7.05 is about facility master planning. So that is the facilitator piece that y'all had asked about, and 7.10 and 7.11 are related to our comprehensive literacy plan. So that's our formative reading assessment system. And then under operations, I just want to remind people we have 3 construction projects on consent agenda for renovations at the College and Career Academy, Humphreys Elementary, and Hutchinson Elementary. And during those renovations, don't forget, we'll be relocating to the former Bethune Elementary. For Hutchinson, Humphreys will move to the Campbell Building. Gifted Education, ESOL, and other programs will move to the Cohen Building. And so, but those are the highlights of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. C. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 5.01 through 8.03? Been properly moved by Nancy Meister, seconded by Ishay Collins. Any discussion? Please open the vote. Next up, we have 9.01, which is the FY 2019 monthly budget adjustment. Can I get a motion to approve? Been properly moved by Nancy Meister, seconded by Ishay Collins. Any discussion? Please open the vote. Moving on to agenda item 9.02, final adoption of the FY 2020 budget. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the 2020 budget with total appropriation amounts as presented. Consolidated General Fund, $854,229,954. Special Revenue Fund, $85,075,668. SPLOST Fund, $162,754,198. Nutrition Fund, $32,568,748. And the Student Activity Fund, $4,500,000. The total appropriation for all funds, $1,139,128,567.
That was impressive.
Thank you.
Properly moved by Nancy Meister. Is there a second? Seconded by Ishay Collins. Is there any discussion? Please open the vote. Next up, 10.01. The LGBTQ Pride Month resolution. Is there a motion? Properly moved by Leslie Grant, seconded by Cynthia Briscoe Brown. Please open vote. Mr. General Counsel, is there need to report out from executive session?
There is, Mr. Chairman. I'm requesting one motion for all four student matters tonight. A motion to uphold the decision of the hearing officer, in Student Disciplinary Appeal Decision Form 2019-8, -9, -10, and -11.
Thank you so much, Mr. General Counsel. Is there discussion?
I would just like to recommend that the recommendation be given to these students to potentially attend West End Academy summer program before they follow the recommendations as we've agreed upon beforehand.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, board member Olympiadis, so I will make a recommendation that they look at all of our options and just pick one. So there's there's a small one at Forest Hills.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, and that
Okay.
was it doesn't have a fancy name, but there's the other one at West End that called Wings that we can recommend as well. So we will, David Jernigan, just make sure that we reach out to those families to make sure they know that they have that support.
Thank you very much. Some sort of bridge for the summer. Thank you.
Great. Is there a motion? Been properly moved by Ishay Collins, seconded by Cynthia Briscoe Brown. Please open the vote. Thank you. We will now have a report out from the community meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight we had 7 speakers for tonight's community meeting. The Latino Parent Association thanked the policy committee and the leadership of Cynthia Briscoe Brown for inclusion of language access in the new policy that was approved for first reading tonight. Also, the Parent Association expressed concerns about no Spanish-speaking drivers or employees were available to assist in bus service issues that they are having as well. We heard a recap from our legislative session and concerns about recess bill and SB 15, and to encourage APS to be more proactive with parents and communities and working together to define what a safe school means. We also continue to hear support of the Excellent Schools framework, but also there was questions in regards to the Office of Innovation report on the status of our charter and partner schools, in which it was revealed that our charter schools are performing the same as other APS schools through the district. We were also informed to continue to hold ourselves accountable for ensuring the excellent framework includes feedback from every and all stakeholders. There was thanks to Larry Hoskins for ensuring that baby changing tables were at Washington High School, and a further request to make sure that those tables are available in at least one, at least one room or facility at our high schools. And finally, AFSCME provide an update on our food service transition with SFE and the impact that it's currently having on its employees, with the follow-up that updated report will be provided at the next board meeting in August. And that concludes the report out for tonight's community meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. We will now have a report out from board committees. Let's start with audit.
We had a very comprehensive report from Connie Brown, Office of Internal Compliance. The only new thing I have to report is that we do have the audits up online. So,
Next up, budget.
We just passed the budget, so we're done for now.
Congrats.
We just need the digest and the city payments.
Policy.
We passed the new language access policy on first read tonight. That policy will be contained in the same area as our family engagement policies, because it's an important part of making sure that all our families are active and engaged and are able to participate in the life of our schools. I would like to urge members of the community who have comments on that policy to please email them. My email address is on the website, and we want to hear from you. We need to hear from you, but we need to do that soon, So if you have comments about that policy, please do let us know that. And if you would prefer to speak with me over the phone or meet with me, I'd be happy to do that as well. Thank you.
Do we have a report out from board conferences? All right. I think that's it. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Been properly moved by Ishay Collins, seconded by Cynthia Briscoe Brown. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.